Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались з кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у щах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страны.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Ті, хто води всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пихцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm coming to you by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1192 of the War News Stream, and we have massive news yet again tonight. We have learned that Ukraine struck Russia's Kursk region in a major attack. Also, Iran is preparing for a major Israel escalation very soon, and U.S. officials are responding to China's recent Taiwan threats, and we have big news around the world, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 48 hours of news from around the world, as we were not able to run a stream last night due to a lack of breaking news. But today, we have plenty of breaking news, not only because we were able to combine the past 48 hours of news, but because today actually was a pretty big news day, as we have been able to hear that it appears that the state of Israel is now preparing for an imminent strike against the Islamic Republic of Iran within the next few days, according to intelligence that surfaced earlier today. At the exact same time, we've been able to see more corroboration of this claim that the Islamic Republic of Iran has declared a NOTAM over the entirety of Western Iran during the 1st of June and the 2nd of June, most likely in preparations to fire a first strike at the state of Israel with drones and rocket forces, or to possibly prepare for air defense action over the western area of the country, as the Israelis will be most likely or possibly conducting their air attacks during that time. Meanwhile, we have also been able to hear that the United States Secretary of Defense has expounded further upon U.S. intelligence that was released earlier, stating that the People's Republic of China may invade and occupy the outlying islands of the Republic of China, also known by many as Taiwan, around the area of the Kinmen County and the Yanyu Island regions. The Secretary of Defense is now saying that this threat is real and imminent, and the People's Republic of China may conduct an invasion of these islands at any given point, and the United States of America is taking this threat incredibly seriously from the People's Republic of China. Outside of that, and inside of the area of Istanbul, we have also been able to hear that the Russians have so far not sent a ceasefire memorandum to Ukraine, although the talks are soon to begin here on the 2nd of June. It appears that the Russian Federation has no prospects of a ceasefire at the moment with the state of Ukraine, and will once again be continuing their normal rhetoric that they have been in the past of the Ukrainians largely practically surrendering in full to the Russian Federation. Meanwhile, we have also been able to hear other significant news that the Russian Federation is now starting to get a little bit angry with Serbia, a historic ally of the Russian Federation, the Soviet Union, and the Russian Empire, as they are saying that Serbian companies are continuously supplying weapons and munitions to the state of Ukraine, largely with the Serbian government's blessing. Meanwhile, we have also been able to see that major attacks have started to rock the areas deep inside the Russian Federation again for the 7th day in a row, as we've been able to see drone attacks exploding around the city of Tula, Kursk, Lvov, Rilisk, as well as Koronivo, along with Ukrainian attacks and defenses being conducted in the northern area of Sumy, as we have also been able to hear that a new Russian offensive has opened in this area, and it does appear that for now, the Russian Federation is making ground, as Ukrainian forces are highly stretched thin within this area, and the Ukrainians are rapidly bringing reinforcements in to deal with the new threat. We have also been able to hear, along the rest of the front lines in Ukraine, of significant battlefield actions that have been occurring along most front lines, particularly within the areas of Kupiansk, the Severonsky Forest, Seversk, Chasiv Yar, Toretsk, and Pokrovsk. Largely pretty much every active battlefield inside of Ukraine at this moment has had a large amount of battle activity over those past few days. The Ukrainian armed forces have been able to inflict a very large amount of casualties and damage onto the Russian Federation's armed forces during that time, and very little ground has been made by Russian offensives except for the one that has now just begun inside of the Sumy region. We have a massive load of news tonight. It is, once again, an incredibly big night as far as we are able to tell, and moving us right on into the major news that is going to be bringing us into the Middle East tonight, as we have been able to hear of a significant development that is currently going on between the State of Israel and the Islamic Republic of Iran, as it appears that the situation, or at least the temporary, uneasy peace that had been attempted by the United States, is starting to fall apart completely at this moment. We have been able to hear that the State of Israel, as of yesterday, was threatening to hit the Islamic Republic of Iran, as the New York Times reported that Netanyahu has threatened to upend U.S.-Iranian nuclear talks by striking Iran's main nuclear enrichment facilities. The reason why the Israelis are pretty much going what could be called rogue against U.S. foreign policy is because they are viewing a direct and existential threat to the state of Israel by the Iranians' continuous efforts to produce and field a nuclear weapon. The Islamic Republic of Iran has been in the process of this, at least publicly, since 2015, with the original JCPOA agreement supposed to stop or slow the Iranian nuclear weapons development, which it did not, and then that treaty was quickly torn up by the successor to the prior president who made the JCPOA, and since then we have seen that there has been no nuclear deal that has even attempted to restrain Iran's abilities to produce or field a nuclear weapon. This in turn has led the Israelis to be incredibly concerned, as the Islamic Republic of Iran has been conducting a proxy war against the state of Israel quite literally since their opening months of the inception of the Islamic Republic in 1980. The Islamic Republic was originally founded in 1979 with the overthrowing of the Shah and the infamous incident of the U.S. Embassy siege and hostage situation that then unfolded very soon after the revolution began and overthrew the Shah of Persia, or the Shah of Iran, as some people would know him. This proxy war has been going on for quite some degree and has largely shaped the entirety of the Middle East over those past few decades, as not only has the Iranians tried to attack and destroy the state of Israel through proxy forces, but they've also attempted to destabilize other countries in the region, including one of our largest allies outside of Israel, Saudi Arabia, as they've continued to try and ensure that they would be able to destabilize, weaken, and destroy powers within the region that ideologically do not align with them, or possibly may be a push to the pull, and would ensure that the Islamic Republic of Iran would eventually reign supreme as the ultimate regional power within the area. For this reason, the Iranian development of nuclear weapons to Israel is considered a highly dangerous thing, and while the United States is trying to conduct a diplomatic resolution to the situation, which may not achieve anything, the Israelis are viewing that this sort of a situation is highly dangerous, and it would be better to act aggressively than not act at all, and then possibly have to deal with a nuclearized Iran that could strike and destroy Tel Aviv, which is the major population of Israel, at any given moment of any given hour. For this reason, the Israelis have now moved forward today with the possibility of a strike, as reports are now saying that Israel will strike Iran within only days from this point. That sounds like it's fairly concrete, but I'll give you all the reality of this. This most likely means that Israel is going to be striking within the next few weeks. At the farthest out, possibly 3 weeks to a month away. But it does appear at this point, according to every development that we've been able to see between the U.S. and Israel, an Israeli strike on Iran is going to be imminent at this point, as the Israelis have decided, at least from what we can tell from their internal government circles, that there is absolutely no way forward with the Islamic Republic of Iran having any ability to enrich uranium to a weapons grade where they could possibly create and test a nuclear weapon. Meaning, from that point on, Israel is now dealing with a nuclearized Iran that can pose a serious threat to the state of Israel and practically its complete destruction in a fairly easy swat. Beyond that, we have also been able to hear, adding on to the credence of this information that was delivered today, that the Islamic Republic of Iran has now issued a full NOTAM for the area of Western Iran, as they have issued a NOTAM for June 1st and 2nd, announcing the temporary airspace closures, and this is according to the Iranians, due to planned rocket launches and drone activities. Many people will remember that, funnily enough, a NOTAM like this was actually issued a little bit before the original drone and rocket launches that were fired directly at the state of Israel. And it does appear that, at least at this moment, either this is going to be a massive exercise, one that's pretty much blanketing a large area of Western Iran, or it could be that the Islamic Republic of Iran is actually planning on conducting a first strike against the state of Israel and trying to get the leg up on the Israelis if the Israelis are going to continue to press forward with the idea of destroying Iranian nuclear and research facilities. If the Iranians act in a hostile manner first, it appears that the Islamic Republic of Iran may end up destabilizing and collapsing the U.S.-led Iranian-American nuclear talks in the middle of it on their own accord, without the Israelis actually firing the first shot. If the Israelis fire the first shot and the Iranians are responding, and this is some sort of an attempt to close the airspace for a proper air defense scenario, that will also largely collapse the U.S.-Iranian nuclear talks, because the Iranians have publicly stated that they will no longer attend the U.S.-Iranian nuclear talks if the Israelis attack them. They will view an attack by Israel to pretty much be an impromptu attack, an attack by the United States of America, and therefore they'll be considering the negotiations from that point forward to be from an illegitimate and untrustworthy footing, and therefore they will not be engaging in them. Meanwhile, the state of Israel has been continuing on in their defense against Iranian proxies, as we were able to see that another Yemeni Houthi missile has been fired at Israel, with the Arrow 3 having to conduct an interception near to the region of the city of Tel Aviv.
Man, those Houthis sure did learn a lesson. They're still firing missiles at Israel. That's bad.
Man, it's always a great thing to see that the enemies of the Republic were defeated to such a degree that they still have the ability to fire at any of our allies in the region. It's a very interesting thing. And we do have to remember that the Houthis did capitulate. I'm just kidding, by the way. They didn't capitulate. The U.S. pretty much just gave up and walked away. But we can see the Arrow 3 interception happening over the city. And that's the end of that clip. We also were able to hear that apparently Israel has been able to once again show footage from inside of a Hamas stockpile storage facility, where we can see that Hamas is still finding themselves within direct access of the food aid that has been provided by multiple international organizations and countries around the world. We can see this here in this video as it's being filmed inside of this food storage facility, that it appears that Hamas still does have, crazily enough, direct control over pretty much all of the food aid that is arriving within the area. This storage unit, or largely warehouse, is completely controlled by Hamas forces, and for this reason, it is making it incredibly clear that Hamas is still hijacking food aid being delivered by foreign nations and also international organizations like the American Red Cross, and are continuing to use them as a form of direct control over the citizens of the Gaza Strip, making it quite clear that the situation still has not subsided inside of the Gaza Strip, and Hamas still pretty much has an iron grip over the civilian population of the Strip due to their control of the major food access or food supplies. Outside of this, however, it is becoming quite clear that there is going to be some sort of a major action that will be happening inside the Middle East, either conducted by Iran within the next few days or conducted by the State of Israel, as reports are claiming that Israel will strike Iran within days, as Iran is now closing their airspace on June 1st and 2nd. And a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts. And it appears that a significant majority of people are saying that the Israelis will strike the Iranians then, during the 1st and 2nd of June. Others are saying that this is most likely a bluff right now and nothing serious will be happening, at least for now. Some others are saying that Iran will strike Israel then, and others are unsure and undecided. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so it looks like 69% of the audience said Israel will strike Iran at that time, while 17% said it's really just a bluff, and 7% said Iran will be the one striking Israel at that time. Now, the big deal is that Iran is the one that closed their airspace between June the 1st and the 2nd, between certain time slots. They're saying that they're expecting missiles and drones, and I think they were trying to say that they're going to launch them. So that it appears to be something that Iran's doing for their side, meaning they're going to aggress on Israel. But also at the same time, though, we're getting also equal reports that Israel plans on jumping ahead of the negotiations that the U.S. is conducting with Iran and launching a preemptive attack on Iran's nuclear sites. Now, we have heard that before, but this time, though, with the NOTAMS combined with that threat, it appears to be a little bit more credible. And also, we're seeing a background political falling out between Netanyahu and the U.S. president. So that might indicate that an attack by Israel is more likely than not, and we're seeing that right now. So generally speaking, I'm a little bit hesitant to say for certain that Israel's going to strike Iran at that time point, but I think it is coming in the very near future. Israel is going to aggress on Iran and take those sites out. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I'm pretty certain that the Israelis are going to be striking the Iranians most likely within the next 3 weeks to a month. I know that the intelligence is saying that they're going to be striking within the next few days, and it would seem that it would be at least theatrical for them to conduct the attack during the NOTAM declaration on the 1st and 2nd. But considering that the Iranians have declared the NOTAM on the 1st and 2nd of June, that is largely going to lead the Israelis to believe, if that actually was the original window for their airstrikes, that apparently some sort of intelligence or some sort of details of their attack plans may have been compromised, and they're going to be completely redrawing the plans and then executing the attack at a later date than June 1st and 2nd, due to concerns that if the Iranians know that the attack is going to be happening for them to close their skies over Western Iran, then it is also highly likely that they may actually know the exact attack paths that the Israelis are going to be taking and where their aircraft are going to be at specific times. And these sorts of things are highly coordinated, generally like a choreographed dance being conducted by the Israeli Air Force, meaning that if they know what days the attack is going to be happening on, they may also know how that choreographed dance in the skies is going to go down to be able to know where to look and where to fire when these Israeli aircraft pop up on their radars, or more so pop up near to their airspace. So I would say that it's definitely going to happen. It's just that I don't believe it's going to be happening on the 1st and 2nd. If it does, I'm going to be very shocked. If it doesn't, then we'll largely be expecting that's happening weeks from then. Nevertheless,
and also another thing as well is if Israel goes through with striking the Iranian nuclear sites while the U.S. is actively telling Netanyahu to hold off on that, because the U.S. has actually gotten much more aggressive with telling Netanyahu to back off of Iran, because the U.S. still believes in negotiating. And even though we see negotiations really aren't getting anywhere between Iran and the United States, they're telling Netanyahu to actually do not attack the nuclear sites and to stand down. But Netanyahu, that's the source of the tension right now between the United States and him, is because Netanyahu wants to go in and ensure that Iran cannot develop those nukes. And honestly, I would say on this issue, just my personal opinion, dealing with Iran like it's not going to honor its word would be the wise way forward by striking those sites. But, you know, the U.S. wants to entertain negotiations some more, so I guess I'll have to wait and see. But we really can't expect Iran to honor their word, because they never have. So that's currently where the tension is coming from.
I would have to say that, in my opinion, I would believe that it's an inevitable thing that Israel is going to strike Iran, and that's also why there's the falling out that's currently going on in the U.S. government against the state of Israel, is because while the U.S. is continuing, like Matthew's saying, to treat the Iranians like they can be trusted at their word, the Israelis are treating them like they can't. And this is something that I'd have to say is a reoccurring issue with the United States, is that we are very trusting, at least under the current administration, of untrustworthy countries and treat them like they operate at face value. These these countries do not operate at face value. Western countries, on the other hand, they do operate at a straight face value because it is a mutualistic relationship, so we want to make sure to be fairly open with our allies, and our allies also like to be open with us as much as they can be about pretty much anything and everything that we interact with them on. On the other hand, Russia is a perfect example of a country that we originally went into, at least during the current administration, believing that they actually are a trustworthy and respectable country, and finally, after months of going through games and charades with the Russians, it appears that the jig is finally up, and everyone's understanding that the Russians are quite truly just an untrustworthy country as a whole. We continue to treat the Islamic Republic of Iran in the same way that we treated the Russians at the beginning of this administration, where we believe and act like the Islamic Republic of Iran is a good faith operator, and that we actually can speak to them and have a lot of faith and credit in what they're saying and what they're planning on doing, which is just not the case. The Islamic Republic of Iran is a wildly untrustworthy country. They continuously operate terrorist forces throughout the entirety of the Middle East. Name a single country on earth that you can think of right now that openly sponsors and supports not just one terrorist organization, but at least several dozen through the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and continues to fund them and field them so they can conduct acts of terror against people, whoever they need to around the world, to try and destabilize countries and bring them down from within from raw pandemonium and fear. There's not really a lot of countries that operate like that. Even North Korea, which largely gets involved in drug smuggling and arms trading, doesn't even get involved in conducting massive terroristic operations throughout an entire region of the world. It's very rare to see that, and a country that would do that is largely an untrustworthy one. Most countries, whenever they have a squabble or a conundrum with another country, they usually take up the actual conventional or direct force of arms and go to war over it. Iran, on the other hand, likes to play it in a very sneaky way, where they will support these terrorist organizations, which clearly are funded and supported by Iran, but when anyone points it out, the Iranians say, hey, look, we have no dealings with them, we really don't have anything to do with them, it's just that they happen to, pretty much just have Iranian weapons flowing through them, and they also end up apparently supporting Iranian goals for the entirety of the region, but that's purely coincidental here. That has nothing to do with us, really. But then at the same time, whenever anyone backs off, then they will start to take direct credit for what these forces are doing. It's been seen for at least the past 2 years that we've been covering this news in the region quite vividly. I mean, it's not even a mystery. Like, once the U.S. starts bombing the Houthis, the Iranians will say, hey, look, we have nothing to do with the Houthis, but what they're doing to the Houthis is wrong. And then once the U.S. starts to leave, and then the Iranians go, we destroyed 2 F-18s by making them roll off the deck, and we'll do it again. Because the Iranians these are truly Iranian forces, is what they are, and they should be treated as such. So we are talking to a country, one of the few, and just to wrap this all up, one of the few countries in the world that supports an entire army of terrorists within the Middle East, or anywhere in the world for that matter, and we are acting like they will be trustworthy at face value. I'm entirely with the Israeli opinion on this. I would not treat the Iranians as a trustworthy country, and I believe that we should instead of trying to negotiate and compromise with a clearly untrustworthy country, we should be moving forward with an ultimatum. They either denuclearize or they suffer the consequences. So they will be the ones to decide whether they're going to be going to war or not over wanting a nuclear weapon. That's not going to be our decision. It's going to be theirs.
I think the main question that a lot of people have is if Netanyahu decides to go against U.S. advice, because the U.S. advice right now is leave Iran alone and let's keep talking. That's their advice right now coming out of the United States. So if Netanyahu follows through with his current threat of striking the nuke sites ahead of that anyway against U.S. advice, then what is the repercussions going to be for Israel? And I think the bet that Netanyahu's trying to play in his mind is he knows that Israel has a lot of public support in the United States amongst the civilian population, and he's relying on that to, if he did jump ahead, for hopefully the civilians to speak up and basically force the politicians not to abandon Israel. Because I think what the immediate reaction would be by U.S. officials is a tendency to either want to back off of Israel, punish them for going against our advice, or something of that nature. But Netanyahu is relying on the fact that maybe enough Americans have loyalty, I guess you could say, to Israel, and that they're not going to be abandoned by the United States because of the public pressure. That's what he's thinking. But, that's why he's hesitating on striking Iran right now, because he's really not sure what the fallout would be. And that is a bit of a point to really consider, because right now that would be the wild card in the whole thing.
Yeah, I would have to say it certainly would be a bit of a wild thing to see, at least for us to just completely cut off the Israelis. But at the same time, I believe that we need to, I think, honestly, we shouldn't be following the Israelis into this. I believe that the U.S. should be spearheading it. We have significant interests in the Middle East outside of Israel, and I believe that the Iranians and their possibility of creating a nuclear weapon and the possibility of them violating this new JCPOA 2.0 quite easily and developing and fielding a nuclear weapon is incredibly high, and it threatens our interest in the region, not Israel's. I mean, just completely removing Israel from the situation, the U.S. has its own interests in the area. We are controlling most of the world's free oil in this area. And when I say free oil, I mean oil that's up for grabs. Russian oil is quite clearly going into the Russian and Chinese sphere. American oil is quite clearly going into the Western-led sphere. But Middle Eastern oil is in the middle, and it's a major producer. Pretty much all of the oil in the world that is not produced in Russia or the U.S. is produced in the Middle East. And because of our control of the region, we get to control where that oil ends up going. Does it end up going to China? Hell no. It does not end up going to China. It ends up going to countries like Europe, because we run the show, and we get to pretty much decide where it ends up. And that means that China has less access to oil, or if they do, it's Russian oil, which is in fairly small supply these days for sure. And that means that it's costing them a lot more money to just basically run their economy, because the cost of transportation is a very important part of the economic machine. And so for that reason, we cannot allow this region to fall under the control of a nuclearized Iran, because they start to use the nuclear weapons as a sword to get their way in the region. We cannot have that, because the Iranians are pretty much in the Chinese sphere, and that means that not only is Russian oil in the Chinese sphere, but now the only remaining free oil fields left in the world, the Middle Eastern ones, are now also in the Chinese sphere as well, and that can simply not be allowed to happen, in my opinion. But with that, it is time for us to move on into some other news in the region, some small news, because I want to make sure to update you all on this, on the ongoing, pretty much instability in Syria. It hasn't turned into a full civil war again yet, but it's like quite literally on the cusp, but it'll be happening here within months. But we have been able to see that now there are clashes going on in between Jelani's forces and the SDF, the Syrian Democratic Forces, along the Euphrates River, which we can see or hear in this clip right here.
Oh dear, just another manic Monday in Syria, I guess you could say.
It's another manic Monday, that's for sure. We can hear the sounds of gunfire breaking out somewhere along the Euphrates River within this area. We do not know where specifically it was. We were never able to get a geolocation, but it was confirmed to be an ongoing firefight between the forces of the SDF and the forces of Jelani. And holy smokes, thank you, Lord Cog, for the massive support.
Thank you, Lord Cog.
Dang, that's
Biggest
crazy.
one.
Crazy right there, crazy. But beyond that, I gotta say that it's once again looking like the whole region's falling apart, because I remember while my esophagus collapsed right there, that the SDF and Jelani once were looking like they might actually end up being friends when Jelani wasn't showing his true colors. Now that Jelani's showing his true colors, it appears that the SDF and Jelani have much to disagree about, much like everyone else in the country has something to disagree with Jelani about, once again showing that there is civil war brewing on the horizon for a second time. But with that, we are going to be moving on out of the Middle East, and we're going to be moving on into Eastern Asia. And I have to bring y'all up to speed on this. This is something we covered a couple of days ago, but we haven't covered since then. I want to make sure to get y'all as up to date on what's been going on in this area as much as we can. So let me bring y'all on over here into this area, and let me get it right here. So this is Taiwan, and I want to make sure that we refer to it by its official name when we're talking about this, so let me make a moment to preface the whole segment by talking about this, because, believe it or not, folks, some people are a little bit misinformed about the official names of countries. There are two Chinas. I know that's a shocker. Everyone knows that there's just China. There's actually two. Taiwan is actually China. Taiwan's official name is the Republic of China. The Communist Chinese, which call themselves China, are the People's Republic of China. So technically there are two Chinas, and the reason why there are two of them is because it is an unsolved situation that has never been solved since the end of the Chinese Civil War in 1949. So pretty much if you think about it, this is like the Roundheads and the Cavaliers, or the Confederacy and the Union in other famous civil wars, at least here in the West. But Taiwan is the democratically led, I guess you could say more Western-leaning China of the two. Everyone knows who the commie Chinese lean towards. They lean towards themselves because they are a large enough power that they've created pretty much their own power blocker sphere. Nevertheless, there has been a massive conflict that's been pretty much going on quietly over the past 70 to 80 years or so since the end of the Chinese Civil War and the founding of Communist China in 1949, which is when will it end and who's going to end up running most or all of China. So far, the Republic of China has been able to hold out, and they are continuing to ensure that they remain a democratic country, led by their own government and led by the Republic of China's government. On the other hand, the communists want to unite all of China that they claim is theirs, including pretty much the entirety of the South China Sea, Taiwan, a small area of Ladakh, or pretty much the Kashmir region. They also want to control the area of Arunachal Pradesh, which is a part of India as well, which isn't really talked about much. And they also want to control small little islands inside of the Amur River between Russia and China. Pretty much most everyone around them they have a small border dispute with. The only people they don't have a border dispute with is North Korea. And I think that's because they just don't want to take on any North Koreans because they'd probably be malnourished and they'd have to put out a lot of expense to feed them. But beyond that, this is the one thing that they are concerned about the most, Taiwan. Out of all of the other regions that they are currently having a border dispute with, none of them actually produce money, and there's really not a lot of people living in them. This area is quite important because there is a lot of people living in it, and that's incredibly important to the People's Republic of China because more people means a larger workforce, meaning more economic output for the Communist Chinese Party, and also a second important thing is that this island is strategically significant, and it has been strategically significant for decades, but especially over the past 15 years. The United States of America implemented in the mid and early 2010s a new kind of Chinese containment policy. Never before had the United States tried a Chinese containment policy because China was never a large enough or strong enough power throughout most of history to really warrant any kind of a specialized containment policy. But as China started to emerge, especially after around 2008 and 2009, after the global financial crisis, as a significant global player and their economy started to skyrocket in size, it was becoming quite clear that China's ambitions were beginning to grow, especially since the rise of Xi Jinping as the premier of the Chinese Communist Party and chairman of the People's Liberation Army. It is becoming incredibly clear that China's aggressive expansionist ambitions are starting to become realized, and China's wishes to become a global superpower big enough to rival or even outdo the United States has started to become a significant threat. For this reason, the United States of America created something called the Island Containment Chain, which is a series of countries, islands, and also pretty much small shoals throughout the area of East Asia that allow for us to pretty much stop the Chinese from breaking out navally into the open Pacific or into the Indian Ocean. This sounds archaic. And it kind of is, but it actually has a lot of relevance or prevalence in the modern world, or a lot of importance. Because one thing that is incredibly important to remember is that global supply chains are a lot more streamlined and actually, interesting enough, a lot smaller than they used to be in the past. And that's crazy. A lot of things are crazy about this when you talk about it on a basic form, but basically, to put it out this way, there are less ships in the world's oceans now than there was in 1940 during the outbreak of the last major world war. Meaning that if a Chinese submarine breaks out into the Pacific and they are able to find, locate, and destroy a container ship carrying tons, thousands of containers filled with goods for a Western-aligned country, they are causing a major economic blow to the West. Far more major than any ship that was ever sunk in World War II. Even the majorly sized ones in World War II would pale in comparison to a single container ship being sunk and destroyed in the modern day. This means that it's incredibly important to protect our shipping lanes and paths throughout the entirety of the Pacific and also through the Indian Ocean, as around 70 to 80% of the world's global shipping traffic travels through the Pacific and the Indian Ocean. Meaning that stopping the Chinese from breaking out into these regions and causing absolute hell in the outbreak of war is incredibly important. They could actually get us by the balls in the outbreak of war in that kind of a situation if Chinese submarines break out into the Indian Ocean or the Pacific Ocean and they're completely unstoppable once they get into those areas. It would be impossible to track them down, quite literally, unless if they conducted an attack on a commercial ship and a U.S. Navy destroyer was within that area during that exact moment in time. That's why we have created a significant or formidable series of military bases in South Korea, Japan, the Japanese island chains heading down to Taiwan, the Philippines, as well as some areas near to the region of the Indian Ocean, and we're currently bringing the Indians or the Sri Lankans in to try and expand our naval abilities into the Indian Ocean itself, to be able to make sure that if the outbreak of war happens, we will be able to stop the Chinese Navy, and specifically Chinese submarines, from breaking out into the Indian and Pacific Oceans. The issue, however, is that Taiwan is the weak link in the chain. Taiwan is not officially recognized as a legitimate country by the United States or really anyone else in the world. We recognize the sovereignty of their government, but we do not recognize them as an actual sovereign country. This means that they don't really get the kind of defense that Japan or South Korea would have, or the Philippines, or any other country would have against China. And also considering that there's an ongoing undisputed civil war at play here as well, that means that the People's Republic of China kind of gets a little bit of a opportunity here to pretty much collapse the entire island containment chain that we have made up to this point by trying to take Taiwan. And recently, we have started to hear that since China is still years away from having a large enough navy to successfully conduct an amphibious invasion of the island of Taiwan and actually physically take the main island, they are going to be trying to create an escalatory stepladder to get to that point. And just several days ago, we were covering U.S. intelligence that said that the Chinese were going to invade and capture Kinmen County and Yanyu Island near to the area of Xiamen. This is something that is somewhat minor. Xiamen in Kinmen County, Kinmen County near to the city of Xiamen, is a fairly small island with not a large amount of people living on it, and it quite literally pretty much is inside of the harbor of Xiamen. Nevertheless, we have been able to hear that the United States, according to the Secretary of Defense, has been able to confirm that the Chinese threat of the invasion of these smaller islands is real and could be imminent, meaning that this is actually a lot closer to reality than we would have ever believed, at least according to the Secretary of Defense and the alarmist statements that he was making today, making it quite possible that China could start to create a stepping stone pattern of taking one thing after the other, taking Kinmen County and Yanyu Island to pretty much show that they can invade and capture and hold Taiwanese territory, and then eventually move on to Penghu County, and then eventually move on to the actual island of Taiwan itself, along with the smaller outlying islands that surround the island of Taiwan that are under Republic of China control. A lot of people have started to say that this is a highly likely option, as analysts are saying that China is preparing to invade Taiwan's outlier islands as a first step to invasion, and it appears that the Secretary of Defense is now somewhat concerned that that is a imminent reality. And a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts, and it appears that well over the majority, at least half of everyone, is saying that China will do that instead, to start testing the waters and work their way up to a full-scale invasion of the island. Others are saying that an invasion is very unlikely overall. Others are saying that China will do a full invasion first, completely skipping the stepping stones and move right on to the prize, which is the main island of Taiwan, and others are unsure and undecided. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
So 55% said China will do that instead by invading these outlier islands first, instead of going for a full-scale Taiwan invasion as the first step, while 14% said China will do the full invasion first, and 19% said any invasion very likely overall. And honestly, I think Taiwan is still on China's plate. Like, it's still something they're eyeballing and they're looking at to really invade that. But this seems to be a much more likely option for China to start basically testing the waters by invading the outlying islands first, as basically testing politically and also militarily how well they can pull this off without much backlash. And also that does give them basically a stepping stone, like the enforcer was saying, just to sort of judge how the whole thing's going to go. So that seems a lot more likely and a much lower barrier to actually start that operation than invading the entire Taiwan island as a whole. So with the recent statements from the Secretary of Defense of the United States saying that it seems imminent, I would say, generally speaking, I would tend to agree with that since China still wants to invade, they probably will do this first, especially considering the fact that they sort of detect a little bit of, I don't know if weakness is the right word or not, but a little bit of hesitancy when it comes from the United States in punishing countries that do really bad things to other countries. So I would say it seems very likely. I'm with the majority. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that it is highly likely. These are actually very attainable goals by the People's Republic of China to achieve with the current abilities that they have right now. If the People's Republic of China want to invade Kinmen County, which is this small island right here, the one that's kind of shaped like a dog bone, that is actually quite easy. I mean, that honestly might be a nothing burger. They might just be able to literally walk onto the island and take it. And the reason why is because the People's Republic of China would be able to blockade the island completely. It pretty much is within a natural harbor or a natural inlet on the coastline, and so they would be able to completely blockade it from any Taiwanese support, and then just literally ferry over PLA troops or PLAA troops from the mainland to land on the island and physically take it. If any Taiwanese troops are there, considering the blockade that would be going on, and pretty much the absolute lack by anyone, including the United States, to do anything about it, they would be able to take the island quite easily by force, and most Taiwanese garrisons on the island would most likely surrender within those opening hours or days, because there would be absolutely no hope of a breakout, or absolutely no hope of the Taiwanese Navy being able to break through and ensure that supplies and reinforcements could keep coming in that would give a reason for those soldiers to fight. This could end up being a fairly concerning sort of a development, and I actually would believe that this may end up being an imminent move, and if so, I believe that the United States of America should take a hostile stance against the People's Republic of China immediately, and should start to arm the Republic of China on the island of Taiwan with as much equipment and weaponry as they possibly can, especially in the anti-ship and air defense roles, because those will be the most important thing to ensure that Taiwan is able to survive the Chinese onslaught once the invasion actually aims for the main island. But with that,
Also, another reason why it might be more likely they try to invade these smaller outlying islands first is because they're already trying that exact same strategy when they're dealing with the Philippines. Because y'all might recall that China actually invaded a very tiny sandbar called Sandy Cay, which was claimed by the Philippines. And the Chinese showed up. They took the island, the little, really small sandbar. And granted, it was more of like a symbolic thing than actually taking a real piece of land. But nonetheless, it did that to send a message to the Philippines that they are going to also start encroaching on their territory as well. And they might do the exact same thing like we're discussing right here to Taiwan. They got away with doing it at Sandy Cay, and they might do it here on a little slightly larger scale with Taiwan to test the waters just like that one. And generally, nobody really responded to the Sandy Cay incident. China just took it. That was the end of it, and we really heard nothing else. And also, China did something to the sailors or the people that were responding to it, and we never learned what happened to the Philippine guards either. So it just sort of went under the radar completely. So the same thing might actually happen with Taiwan, and that might be why they're going for it, because they saw how it went with Sandy Cay.
I would agree. That's pretty much been showing that the Chinese can get away with things, and there won't be a major international response. So they may pull this off. In unlike other situations where I'd say that Taiwan actually does have a chance, if China wanted to pull off an invasion of Kinmen County, there was quite literally nothing even the United States could do to stop that. At least in my opinion, looking at the strategic situation of how that battlefield will look on the air, sea, and land, there is absolutely no chance in hell anyone could do anything to save Kinmen County. But moving on from that, and out of that little bit of news right there, and on into the rest of the news that we've been able to get for the day, we have also been able to hear some larger developments inside of Turkey, as the Ukrainians and Russians are going to be meeting up again for another round of talks. And Ukraine is ready to take part in the next round of talks with Russia, according to the head of Ukraine's presidential office, Yermak. He emphasized the importance of receiving a ceasefire memorandum from Russia before the next round of talks. Earlier, Zelenskyy said Ukraine had not received one, and from what we know, they still have not. The Russian Federation has not given a ceasefire memorandum to Ukraine, but Ukraine has given a ceasefire memorandum to the Russian Federation, which has gone unresponded so far. You're expecting the Russian Federation may not give a ceasefire memorandum, and if they do, is going to have absolutely insane criteria and demands inside of it, which will practically turn out to make it into something that will be unacceptable, at least for the United States and Ukraine as a whole. Also, by the way, before I move on from all of the major news that we had inside of East Asia, I just realized that we have to cover the past 48 hours of news, and we still have some other things to cover in Asia. So let me circle back to that really quickly and make sure to cover what we had in the Koreas. First, we were able to hear that there's been ongoing trade talks between Russia and North Korea for weapon systems, as Russia did send an advanced air defense system, which was the A-50 mainstay that we saw a while ago. Let me go pull up that North Korean A-50 mainstay, because some of y'all will remember this. Let's see. Here we go. So, let's see. Dang, there's got to be a picture. Oh, here it is. Here's the picture of Kim Jong-un with the A-50 mainstay, where the North Koreans said that they built an AWACS system. Don't you remember that, Matthew, when they claimed they built this thing from scratch? But the reality is that it's quite literally an A-50 from Russia.
Yeah, they do that with everything, like their boats, their planes, everything. They claim it's theirs, and it's never really their plane.
Yeah, it wasn't. This was never their plane. Russia literally flew this into North Korea, landed it, and then what the North Koreans did to make it look brand new is that they painted over every single Russian marking that existed. You could see that there was no red star on the vertical stabilizer any longer, and that's because the North Koreans painted it off, so that way it didn't look like it was produced and operated by Russia. And then what they did, oh, here's an actual picture of one of these, by the way. Literally same model of aircraft, same AWACS boom and radar and so on and so forth. They claim that they built the thing from the ground up. The reality is that the Russians gave it to them. And also, apparently, in exchange for thousands of troops and 1 million barrels of fuel. Now, that one's actually quite interesting. 1 million barrels of fuel. And this is all according to intelligence that we've been able to gather a little while ago. This is showing that Russia's in a very bad spot. The North Koreans don't have an ability to produce fuel. And that's kind of the fun thing about this, is that if the North Koreans are giving the Russians fuel, that's like Saudi Arabia giving you water. Like, if you need water from Saudi Arabia, you are in dire straits because you must be completely out of water and any ability to access it. And notice it's not oil, it's fuel. So it's an actual usable fuel product. This is showing us that Gazprom, as well as every other, Gazprom oil and Lukoil and all of the other major manufacturers of fuel products in Russia are in such a bad strait, and the fuel consumption in Russia is in such a severe deficit, they're literally getting fuel from North Korea now to try and balance out the difference. You can't make that up. That's actually pretty damn bad right there when you're getting fuel from North Korea. Let me go show y'all North Korean, let's see, annual fuel production in barrels. So, according to this, this is capping them
500,000 barrels a year.
500,000 barrels per year. Now, let me put this into perspective, that a country like the United States consumes I believe it's something like 9 million barrels of oil a day. Not a year, that's a day. And the North Koreans are only able to produce 500,000 barrels of refined fuel products approximately per year. So that is giving you all a little bit of an idea that 1 million barrels of fuel is quite literally 2 years of North Korean fuel refining and production that has been given to Russia in about the course of 8 months. So this is giving us...
And that was just for one air defense system? Like, what do they mean, like one system? Just one unit or one launcher or what?
Just one A-50.
Just one A-50, and that was it.
Yeah, apparently, well, we also know there's more stuff that isn't being included here, like a large amount of foodstuffs that are being provided to to North Korea from Russia, because Russia has a surplus of agricultural products, and the North Koreans really do want access to that. So we know that that's also been provided as well. So really, it's just the A-50 mainstay and the agricultural products. And in return, the North Koreans have given them about 2 years of raw fuel production.
Yeah, honestly, that doesn't seem like a really fair trade, actually. Like, I get the fact that it's desperate for Russia to want fuel from North Korea, which is a very destitute country, but to trade an air defense system for 1 million barrels of fuel, which is 2 years of supply for North Korea, that seems like it was heavily lopsided toward the Russian side of things.
It really does. Also, let me go get fuel consumption by country, and let's see, per day. We'll go with oil consumption, but this is refined fuel consumption for the large part. So, let's see here. Yes. The United States. Actually, let me go see if I can get something a little bit more modern. This appears to be in the year of 2022. And this is oil consumption in barrels per day. The United States in 2022 consumed 21 million barrels of oil in a single day. That means refined fuel products, because nothing runs on crude fuel. Everything has to be refined somewhere, somehow, for it to be usable. 21 million barrels of the stuff was used in a single day in 2022. China also used 16 million. So that kind of puts it into perspective for y'all how bad off the Russians are, because the North Koreans, on these kinds of fuel production numbers, they don't even exist. They cease to exist. If we go all the way down to the bottom, you'll probably find North Korea down here. Let's see here. North Korea, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. Dang, they're not down here. Let's scroll back up. They're going to be down near the bottom. We just need to find There we go. North Korea's fuel consumption was 15,000 barrels of fuel products a day. You can tell that's literally microscopic on a global scale. And of course, it doesn't make it quite clear that the Russians are doing incredibly badly, because they also consume a large amount of fuel on a daily basis. They consume 3.6 million barrels of fuel in 2022 on a daily basis. And that means that if North Korea provided them with 1 million barrels of fuel, they actually covered, with that massive amount for North Korea, Russia's fuel consumption for about maybe 8 hours. So it's not even really much to actually account for anything. But anyways, we've also been able to hear that North Korea sent Russia 20,000 shipping containers of munitions since September of 2023. These shipments included 9 million rounds of artillery, more than 100 ballistic missiles, and over 200 heavy artillery munitions, as well as anti-tank guided missiles and rockets. So the Russians are getting the bang for the buck from the North Koreans at this point. It's actually a massive amount of stuff, and in return, the Russians gave them a mainstay. And I know that sounds like nothing, one mainstay for all this, but a mainstay actually is a huge improvement for North Korea, because the A-50 is an airborne early warning and control aircraft, or as we would call it, an AWACS. And North Korea didn't have one of these before they got them. And so what the AWACS does is it's a giant flying command center and radar system that is able to let North Korea actually have a lot more control over the air battlefield happening over their country if a war was to break out. So this actually was a huge technological innovation for North Korea when they got it. And I guess to the North Koreans, it was worth quite literally everything that they produce in the country. And considering that they don't have any other significant trade partners, I guess that is the case. Because if you have no one to trade your stuff with, I guess it's worth nothing. So an A-50 is worth almost all the production available in your country. But I would have to say,
I wonder why they should have just traded in rubles, honestly. It seems like North Korea would have wanted a nice briefcase full of rubles in exchange for the stuff.
Man, what would they buy with that though? It's not like dude, like they would give out the rubles as toilet paper to the citizens of North Korea, because that's about how much they're worth and what they could do with them. But
North Korea would turn that down. Sorry, Russia. We have enough copy paper already. We're good.
The Democratic People's Republic of Korea does not accept bullshit. It's like, we do not accept that. But we also were able to hear that a South Korean naval plane crashed near to the area of the city of Pohang, which you can see in this clip right here. Unfortunate, 4 crew members did die in the crash.
어 미쳤다. 어머 어떡하. 아니 왜 저렇게 될까? 금방 회차.
That's the end of the clip, but still showing us an unfortunate incident in South Korea. Moving on from that, we also were able to hear that India has rejected water treaty talks with the Pakistanis, as India rejects the Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's call for dialogue on the Indus water treaties, according to what we were able to hear. So it does appear that a conflict is going to be inevitable between Pakistan and India, again, largely over the water resource issue. Moving on out of that and on into the area of Europe, it actually is time for us to finally get into the massive amount of Ukraine war news that we have tonight. Believe me, folks, it is a lot. It's 2 days of combined combat footage and information, and I also had to annotate a little bit of today's news and just go with the big ticket stuff so we can make sure to fit every single thing in. But when you put 48 hours of combat together, it actually amounts to a lot of clips. Nevertheless, before we move into that, I do want to make sure that we take a little bit of a moment to be able to chit-chat with all of y'all and have a couple of questions answered before we get on into this segment to provide a little bit of a more natural segue. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so let's get to chit-chatting. Our first super chat of the night goes to Lord Cog, who threw in a humongous $250 donation, by far the largest super chat of the night. And thank you very much, Lord Cog, for that support, and also trying to buy stock and enforce your channel. And also, that's a joke, by the way, but thank you very much, seriously, Lord Cog, for the massive support. He said, thank you for what you do.
And thank you, Lord Cog, for enjoying what we do. And thank you very much for massively supporting it. That is more support than we could ever ask for here on the channel, but we are massively appreciative and thankful for it. You help us to do what we do, and you also help us to have a little bit of the luxury here and there where we get to cancel a show from time to time, and I want to make sure to share that with all of y'all since we have the peak viewership here tonight, which is hovering around 9.3 to 9.1 thousand people, that we did not run a stream tonight. So if you missed last night's stream, it's because it was not running. We did not run a show. We like to make sure that our quality of news is as high as it can be, and considering that there wasn't any major global developments going on in the world yesterday, it was just a lot lot of combat footage from Ukraine and really not a lot that was even showing the actual frontline situation, we decided just not to run a show because we don't want to degrade quality to try and make sure that we remain consistent. So I got to thank you so much for allowing us that kind of an ability, along with everyone else who supports the channel, to make sure that we maintain our news coverage as the highest quality that we can, and to make sure that we run streams that actually do have a lot of well-researched news in it, and also a lot of good news in it as well. And I got to thank you so much once again, Lord Kong, for being an old guard and a channel legend, because folks like you have been around for a while, and folks like you have made a big part in making this channel possible, and making it a reality for us to be able to do this as a living. We do this as our full-time job, folks, if you're watching this tonight. This is Enforcer Matt and I's entire life. We spend 70 to 80 hours a week most weeks, pretty much 6 to 7 days a week, depending on how the week goes, making sure that we get the best news out here for all of y'all. And we do this on the stream absolutely free. There's no ads. We don't really demand that anyone supports the channel, but the folks who are supporting the channel have made this a real reality for us for years at this point, 1,191 days as of today, to keep this thing rolling, not just for all of y'all, but for us as well. And we massively thanks folks like Lord Cog and everyone else who's supporting the channel, because y'all are making this thing a real thing, a reality, not just a dream for the tens of thousands of people who have been here so far tonight, and also Matthew and me as well. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. And with that, it is time for us to move on into the next one.
Yes, indeed. Also, W said in the live chat, I nearly panicked because I thought y'all quit. Oh, no, we would definitely did not quit. It's also extremely rare for us to take a night off like that. Like, usually, like, I think we've only done this maybe a handful of times, like, I think 4 or 5 times in the history of the channel, taking a night off because there's not enough news to cover. And outside of that, it's usually something life-related if we have to take something off beyond that. But taking days off is very unusual for us because we like to keep our schedule very consistent, because that's why a lot of people like the channel, is because we are on every single night, and we don't want to become scattered with it or spontaneous. That gets a little bit old after a long time. But nonetheless, we are moving on to our next super chat here, which goes to another channel legend. It is none other than BC Skyman. He's been here for day one, basically, and he puts in an $80 donation. And thank you very much, BC, once again, for that support. And also, like you said in the live chat, calling us the best channel on YouTube. And thank you for the kind words. And Enforcer, what say you?
He's real. BC Skyman is an old guard of the channel. He's been here since day 4 when the channel blew up. And I got to thank you so much for the support and being here again tonight, because folks like you, BC Skyman, never throw it in comments, but we know that you always are saying incredibly nice things in the live chat and have been a pillar and rock of the Lee Spring Army, the community of this channel. And I got to thank you so much once again for being here tonight and supporting this channel, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make sure that the Lee Spring Army will never truly die. And so massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And also, considering that we have a moment here, I thought I would show y'all something that was incredibly interesting that Matthew and me saw today. And I just wanted to show you this because I wanted to briefly rabbit hole on something. I just wanted to do a rabbit hole on anything, really. So I'm going to show y'all this because I thought it was pretty neat. We actually saw it today, and they're actually getting a little bit rare. So I wanted to show it to y'all. Matthew already knows what's coming up, and he's like, oh, God, it's going to be trains, isn't it? And it's absolutely going to be trains, because we got to see a pretty neat one today, and I'm going to be showing it to y'all once I get it uploaded to the Discord. So it is nearly uploaded. Hang on, folks, almost uploaded. There we go. It is uploaded, and I'm going to be showing this to y'all because Matthew knows exactly what they are. Let me get that off the screen. And this is a Kansas City Southern. Hey, look at that. That's pretty neat. I wanted to show this to y'all because I just thought this was pretty cool. The Kansas City Southern doesn't even exist anymore as a railroad. So I was like, hey, that's pretty neat that we got to see it. Kind of rare in a piece of American history for the large part. It's been merged with Canadian Pacific to create Canadian Pacific Kansas City, or CPKC. And so we don't get to see these anymore. And what was even more interesting is that this was actually a Kansas City Southern of Mexico locomotive, an SD70 Ace. So pretty cool one. You don't get to see that often. In fact, I've never seen one of these things before. So I had to make sure to take a picture of it and show it to all of y'all, because it's not only a part of American industrial history and also a part of the moving gears that make America possible today, but this was actually a part of the Mexican division of the Kansas City Southern, which is a pretty interesting one at that. And Adam said, this is a tough looking train. Yeah, it's not going to get any better. This is the last time you'll ever see this paint job actually on a train, because they've come out with a new livery. CPKC livery. Let me go show it to y'all. That eventually all of their trains are going to be painted in, because this list just disconnected. Well, what do you know?
Oh
what do you
no,
know?
it didn't like train talk. It didn't like it.
It didn't like trains. It didn't like trains. It booted us off because it didn't like the trains. But beyond that, that's what the new livery is going to look like. So this is the last of a dying breed, actually, those kinds of trains. So I just thought that was neat, and I thought I'd show y'all something that we just saw out in the world today that is pretty unique in its own way. But anyways, with that, I hope that was a little neat tidbit to share, BC Scam, and I thank you once again for the massive support and throwing one in without a comment, because folks like you have made this channel possible for years now. And so with that, we are on, and also Eric Kress is absolutely correct. Those are still all over the St. Louis or St. Louis area, but soon they will all be replaced, and especially in Alabama, they're non-existent. We never see Kansas City Southern stuff. The nearest main line for Kansas City Southern, I believe, is around somewhere in Mississippi, near to Biloxi or Gulfport. So we never see those around here. Honestly, all we see in Alabama is some Union Pacific, a good amount of CSX, and a good amount of Norfolk Southern, and anything else from any other railroad is almost unheard of and quite rare. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the final question of the segment, and then we're going to be getting on into the rest of the news.
And our last one goes to Richard McGurl, who's also a longtime channel legend and a longtime channel supporter as well, who threw in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Richard, as well, for the $50 support and also helping to keep the channel running. And we do appreciate that very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you for the massive support now with this channel to keep on running, Richard McGurl. You are a channel legend and an old guard. And I gotta thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because while you didn't throw in a comment, you're helping us to keep this thing possible. And in the words of Lord Cog, keep doing what we are doing. And so a massive thank you to you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well, the best I can, as a matter of fact. And of course, we're about to be moving on into the rest of the news. But I saw Juan Milton de Leon say, what is the CPKC rail network? It's the biggest railroad in America now. Just became it recently. And let me see if I can show you this. That's their network, the red and the black lines here. And I actually was correct. The closest line that they have is in Gulfport, or Meridian, more so. But that's their whole network. It's the biggest railroad in North America now. It beats out even Union Pacific, which used to be the largest up until just recently. So kind of a neat thing with that. As far as trains go, I'm always interested in trains. But there are also a lot of other important things out there, like major trucking companies like J.B. Hunt, which are a really big part of the logistical structure of the United States, as well as the shipping industries as well, which largely are overseas based at this point. There aren't really a lot of American intermodal carriers or really freight carriers of most kinds anymore, which is a little unfortunate. But still, that is the CPKC, the biggest rail network in North America right now. Although it's the biggest, I still like CSX the most. That's just my opinion. But anyways, with that, we are going to be moving on into the rest of our news. And moving on into Serbia, we were able to hear that the Serbs are getting heat from the Russians, as the Russians' Foreign Intelligence Service has accused Serbia of continuing to supply Ukraine with large quantities of ammunition. According to information received by the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service, Serbian defense enterprises, contrary to the neutrality declared by officials in Belgrade, continue to supply ammunition to Kyiv, according to the statement. The contribution of Serbian defense workers to the war unleashed by the West, the outcome of which Europe would like to see as a strategic defeat of Russia, amounts to hundreds of thousands of shells for MLRS and howitzers, as well as millions of rounds of ammunition for small arms, according to the statement by the Russians, showing that even Russia's supposed greatest ally in Europe is even supplying the Ukrainian war effort against the Russians. A pretty fun thing. Moving on from that and into the rest of our news, we were also able to hear of significant attacks occurring inside the Russian Federation, as we were able to hear that a Russian factory was hit in Tula. We were really able to hear it in this clip. Listen to it. Oh, what's that? Oh, bliad!
Holy moly.
We were not able to tell.
That sucks to be walking down the street and, something blows up next to you. That's a terrible thing.
A terrible thing, for sure. We don't really know what factory was hit, but we do know that there was a factory that was blown up inside of Tula. Moving further on down and into the Kursk Oblast, we also got to hear of explosions ongoing in the city of Kursk. Take a listen.
Drone.
There's the drone right over there.
Чайки!
And he's yelling for chai tea in the middle of this whole attack.
Bring me my chai tea, good sir.
Dude, this guy thinks he's at the Starbucks drive-thru. Chai tea! It's like, bro, calm down, dude. You're in your commie block.
Да.
Oh, looks like an air.
Нихуя. А чё она так низко, нахуй? Ну это не ракета, от ракеты был бы звук.
And there goes the rocket past the poplars. We can now hear the boom of the rocket. The car alarms are going off. It sounds like glass just busted somewhere from something.
I think it blew some windows out.
Casualty!
That's unusual for Russian. I'd expect them to yell, "Vodka now!"
Man, I was expecting him to say something like Bill Bond or something like that.
Да, стекла
Bail me out!
Living a prison or something like that. Up engaged prison,
в
блин.
машинах и в подъезде. Где стекла выбило-то?
Вон. Я не знаю.
В Лансере стекла выбило?
Не в Лансере.
А где?
It's
No,
always weird. The Russians really never seem bothered by any of this. Like when it happens, like obviously they don't like stuff blowing up near their house, but they always just seem like they're just filming it, like just kind of like just an observation. They're not really like worried by it in like a panicky sense, like an American would. They're just kind of like, whatever.
Dude, honestly, man, he seemed more bothered about the chai tea than he did the ongoing attack on his own home city.
Yeah, this is like a show for the Russians. They just show up outside, they pull up with their chai tea and popcorn and watch.
Dude, honestly, I just gotta say, folks, lessons to be learned for American viewers here. Not that the Russians are any people you want to emulate, to be entirely honest, but beyond that, though, don't freak out about everything, because you know something that does get annoying to some people, and myself included, is when the lights ever go out in public, there's always that one person that has to go, "Oh God!" like the whole world's coming to an end because the lights just flickered out. It's like, calm down. Your world hasn't exploded. It's just the lights going out. Now, that might be a shock to some people who may have 3 brain cells, and one of them's a photovoltaic cell, and it just realized there's no light coming in. But beyond that, no rush, no panic. There's not a bomb blowing up over your head. So maybe a lesson to be learned on that one.
Вон внизу где-то стекла повыбивало.
Да, что-то заленчало, блин.
Охуеть.
Мы еще и сняли это.
Да.
Я прям заметил ее, как она летела, блин.
Но это вон там вот летела она. А въебала вот
она
оттуда.
летела, блядь, и это дрон был, он скинул, блядь.
Охуеть.
Вот пидорасы, блядь. Надо автоматы идти.
Do they have a whole town council in this, like, apartment?
А почему?
Yeah, really, they got the whole gang over. It's like
Bro,
a
it's-
Friday night football event.
Do you have one guy, I think it's a they blew it up, and then I go, what is going on here? I don't know, but I think something big's going on around here. You know, it's like, well, how many people are in this place?
Видно. Это хуй его знает.
Но она улетела вон туда.
Well, anyways, moving on from that attack in Kursk, we're going to be skipping past these because it's almost the same thing just the other day before. We also were able to see that the railroad station in Logov apparently was hit as well.
Что-то горит.
You can tell because of the industrial-grade fans going off in the background of the whole clip.
А что хер его знает.
That's the end of that clip, but moving further on down and into the area of Rilisk, we also got to see that Rilisk came under attack again. Oh, what's that?
Oh. Oh no, it's
Oh.
a screamer. That is
Bro.
so realistic.
Man, man, it's so Rilisk. But we also get to see the attack on Rilisk right there in that short clip. A little bit of an overreaction, but anyways, moving on from that and down
Yeah,
to
who reacts like that to a bomb exploding near your house, like to start screaming? That's just like that's rough.
I mean, honestly, man, kind of gives me the ick. But we also got to see a base being destroyed in Koronivo.
Hey, look, there's just like a ladder leading up to nowhere.
Man, it's the stairway to heaven.
There's no heaven right there. It's a stairway to rubble.
That's your stairway to a liability lawsuit, blid.
A Russian would climb that ladder and try to change the light bulb into a destroyed house, I'm sure. Also, I was being sarcastic, by the way. Some people were talking about, what do you mean, bro? That explosion was close as hell. I was being sarcastic. Like, obviously, you know, there's a reason why they're screaming. Something just blew up right next to their house, so that's why.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's a joke. He's a joke, everyone. Why you have to be so mad? It's only a joke. But moving on from that and down into the area of Sumy, we were able to hear unfortunate news that the Russian Federation is making steady advances in their ongoing offensive. They have been able to take several Ukrainian settlements within the area, and it does appear that the Russian Federation has now begun a significant offensive in this area. That is with the Ukrainians holding incredibly small amounts of the Kursk Oblast left. They actually hold no more villages, and we've stopped representing their holdings on the map because they only hold this small area of Aleshnia and Gornal, which really aren't even villages. They're more so hamlets, if you want to call them that, something smaller than a village, because they have, I think, about a dozen or 2 dozen people living in them each. So it appears that at this point, the Russians are now pushing into Sumy instead of the Ukrainians pushing into Kursk. And we'll have to see how this offensive turns out, but for now, the Russians are making steady advances in that area. Meanwhile, inside of the location unknowns, we actually were able to see a couple of interesting ones. First, we were able to see this absolutely fire picture of a Milan 2 ATGM, which looked pretty clean, I have to admit. We also were able to hear that there's been a poll running, a poll, and we love the polls. Ukrainian reports Russian advances near Sumy with increased troop presence, and a lot of people are wondering, has the offensive officially begun? And it appears that a majority are saying yes, the Russian offensive is in full swing. Others are saying that's been started for a while, and others are saying that the Russian offensive is just probing and not doing anything serious. But Matthew, what are you thinking about this, and what is everyone else thinking about it as well?
So it looks like 65% of the audience said yes, the Russian offensive is now in full swing near Sumy at least, and probably expanding beyond that, while 16% said no, the Russian offensive is just probing right now, and that's why they're making really small advances, and 13% said it's been started for a while. And we were expecting a big summer offensive from Russia. They've been amassing over 50,000 troops around this area, and it sounds like they are making advances near Sumy. So that does indicate to me the Russian offensive has begun. Some people say it hasn't, and some people say it has. I would argue that it has begun already because the Russians are going up against a very hardened Ukrainian defenses. Like, it's not just simply, walking into a town and taking it. They're going up against a pretty hardened Ukrainian defense line. So for them to be making it past that, they are obviously putting a pretty good bit of manpower into the situation, and that indicates the offensive has begun with that 50,000 plus strong force that Russia has been amassing near that area. So it's not quite necessarily summer yet to some people, but basically Russia has decided to go ahead and start it a little bit early, in my opinion. So I'm with the majority. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree. I believe the summer offensive has started. This has about the same size and intensity so far as the Vovchansk offensive, which had a similar amount of troops behind it as the one that we're currently seeing right now. So I would say that this is the beginning of the Russian summer offensive, a little bit ahead of schedule. But moving on from that and into the remainder of our news, we have also been able to see a Russian riding their assault donkey. He never really got the lesson on how to ride a donkey. He's apparently resting his whole ass on the donkey's neck, which isn't really great for the donkey.
Не души его.
Jackass on jackass, блядь.
Man, we have some yes on ass action, damn!
Да встань ты рядом с ним, иди. Чё ты на него сел-то?
Look at those dumbasses.
I mean, a donkey really isn't supposed to support the weight of a fat ass, so I think the guy ought to get off. But anyways, moving on from that and on into our next bit of news, we also got to see the Ukrainians in the presidential brigade surviving a really close call. Oh, that was close. Wow. And now they're flooring it, but... Man, they're flying at this point. Oh, here comes another one, and they took that out. Another close call. It appears that the ride in the back of the truck is a little rough. They're running over craters and bumps in the road as they continue to look out for more incoming FPV drones. That's the end of the clip, but still wildly close calls. We also got to see the Russian casualty report over the past 24 hours. And sadly, no Bobcats again.
Oh, no Bobcats, zero, absolutely none, zilch. That's unfortunate right there, but, it happens from time to time. It seems these days we get Bobcat losses in huge, dumps, and not necessarily a trickle over time. But that's okay, though. We get a good bit every once in a while. But Enforcer, tell us more.
And according to Ms. Disa, keeper of the records, Ms. Disa stated that an increase in troop losses has occurred occurred over the past week, which is good to hear. Others are below 7-day averages. May totals are less than April, and overall closer to last summer's numbers, except for drones, which are much higher. And according to the casualty report, we did see that the Ukrainians had a really good day, as 1,140 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 2 APCs, 74 supply trucks, 1 main battle tank, 35 artillery pieces, 71 drones, 1 MLRS, and 1 anti-aircraft warfare system. A very good day indeed. Moving on out of that news and on into the actual battlefields of Ukraine, we were able to see in the Kupiansk area that the Ukrainians were able to target and destroy a Russian field depot full of fuel and lubricants. And you see here that they were hitting it with the drones. We see them now hitting it again with the drones. And now the fuel depot and the lubricants are burning. That's the end of the clip, but wonderful to see. Wonderful to know. Moving on into our next clip, we also got to see the Ukrainians storming the Russian positions. We're going to be muting this, but
That's
this
like
is actually...
dangerous to a movie trailer or something.
Yeah, and this was actually filmed by the Russian Volunteer Corps.
That's unusual to hear a Russian volunteer. That's just sort of like going contrary to the whole theme.
Well, yeah, but that's because they're Ukrainian volunteers on the Ukrainian side. You know, the old classic Russian Volunteer Corps from the days of the Belgrade incursion.
Oh, look at that. Chuck a little grenade down there. Give him the smoke treatment.
Man, he tossed that dude in like he was in COD, man. It's just a little masterfully, you know, real quick like and everything.
I don't like cod. I like halibut.
Man, rare spotted halibut. But moving on from that and on into our next clips further down the line, we also get to see somewhere around the area of Novosibirsk more Russian forces getting hit. And we get to see this here from drone. Take a look. And we see the drone coming on in as they start cooking. And boy, do they cook, Blid.
That's actually illegal to park there, and the Ukrainians are coming in as parking enforcement to make sure that they don't park there again.
Excuse me, you can't park here, Governor.
The penalties for illegal parking in Ukraine has been increased slightly.
And it appears that it is now fire and fury, the likes of which that have never been seen. Meanwhile, in the Sibironsky forest, we also get to see them hitting the Russians down here with the drones of the Signum Battalion. I guess you could call them the Signum Male. What kind of ship guy? Well, it's not you know, certain kinds of criminal charges. I can tell you that.
My Bugatti is prison orange.
I'm wearing my jumper. Cavioli in prison. It's called contraband.
See, I'm like a fighter pilot. I'm like an alpha male. I wear orange jumpers.
Man, I gotta tell you, man. Never get y'all's life advice from a former pimp. That's just a good running rule.
Look at this thing. It's just in the forest full of Q-tips, basically. No bark, no leaves, no nothing. It's just like Q-tips.
Oh, and they hit the mortar. Oh, and they got it. Look at that. Real Signum male activities here. Moving on from that and down the line into the area of Seversk, we also get to see some drone operations happening in this area by the 118th Territorial Defense Force. We see them flying around in. I can't really tell you what's going on in this clip, but they're about to hit that four-wheeler. We could tell that right there at the last minute. We can also see them hitting another one. We see the whole area is on fire now. That real territorial defense going on here.
So it's giving me flashbacks to those Los Angeles fires a little bit.
Honestly, yeah, it kind of does look like that.
That's weird that we never really heard anything else beyond that. Like, I don't know what's happening with Los Angeles. Look at that. A little bit of side sparklers or something, too.
Oh, you know what it's like, Matthew. Once something like that's over in America, no one ever follows up. It's just over. Like, it's the next story's cooking. Time to move on. We haven't actually heard anything about that. I know someone asked the other day, have we heard anything about the LA fires and updates? No, I don't even know how the rebuilding is going in a lot of those areas that were affected right now. Like, for example, Pacific Palisades or Brentwood Park or north of Montana or really any of the other areas like, hell, Altadena that was greatly affected by the fire or Sierra Madre. We don't even have a clue. So, unfortunately, we couldn't even tell you all about that because we don't have any information on it so far. I guess one day we'll have to personally go out there and see how it's going and what those areas look like. I would assume that there's probably not a lot of rebuilding going on right now because they're probably still in the process of conducting insurance claims and trying to see what they're going to rebuild where or something along those lines. But moving on from that, we also got to see some very lucky Ukrainian defenders here in the K2 battalion. We see him wandering around here. Oh, what's that? That's an incoming shell. And then we hear them dogs.
Просрал чешу. Вот это работа. Авиация — это сила. Кап. Повезло нам, прикинь. Не взорвался. Сошел.
But that's the end of the clip right there. And moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see the Ukrainians hitting and destroying a Russian motor pool near Evasive with lo-fi hip-hop beats. And once again, this was conducted by the actions of the 118th Territorial Defense Forces. We can see here at the Russian position. And we can see it's about to be destroyed here soon. And here comes the FPV drone to knock out the Russians, and the Russians were knocked out. Here comes another drone coming on in, also to knock out the Russian position.
The Russian position is always one of sort of ignorance, I think.
The Russian position is of scum and villainy.
At least in the military and government, that is.
Degree, believe it. Moving on from that and down into the area just west of Soledar, we also got to see them hitting Russian forces, but apparently that was a little spicy. But we did get to see them, hitting them in a pipe, which also apparently was somewhat spicy. I didn't think they were spicy, but apparently they're spicy. Anyways, we did get to see the Ukrainians taking down a Mavic over Chasiv Yar. There is a Russian Mavic drone hanging a bomb below it. Very smart, very wise. And we can see them here flying a drone around. Oh, look, he keeps on trying to evade. It will not evade for long. At least. We see them chasing the drone down. It's trying to get out of here. Oh, they drop, they about to drop the net onto the drone. Oh, they hang around trash. They fly trash over the drone. And it gets it. Drone falls to ground. Explode. Very sad. Another lost $2,000 drone. Very pitiful.
It's like the net wasn't even like extended or anything. It was just like hanging down. They just snagged the propeller.
Yeah, they just hang it down on the dongle, and then the drone, its propellers get caught up in the net detached from dongle, a drone fall to ground. Very sad.
It's a pretty ingenious way to get it.
I'd have to agree. It's actually pretty easy, and it also allows for the drone to be reusable, thus decreasing the cost. And there goes another one. And here goes another one. Right down to the depths of hell. Look at that.
Look at that thing struggling.
Man, look at it. Man, they got another one. Oh, there's some that splashed down in that pond down there, but there goes another one. Go meet your buddies in the pond.
What the hell was going on in that pond? There was like a huge like blotch of squid ink or something in the spot where the water was rippling.
It was the Loch Ness monster. It got scared.
It's the Bliatman.
Baba Yaga Bliat.
Baba Yaga rise from the deep.
Man, that was Hot Dog Man taking a bath down there.
Oh man, emerging from the water like a Baba Yaga mythology creature monster.
Oh man, I'd be coming out that water like the monster at Cocoa Beach. Oh man, absolutely.
Oh man, coming out of that water, coming out of that water like the legend of Cocaine Beach.
Man, when I go to the beach, they cancel for a snow day. Oh man.
Oh man.
Aw, man, I'm telling you. Aw, man. Anyways, near to the area of DONETSK, we got to see them destroy Russian multiple. Take a look. 28th Brigade does the action, hitting and destroying a real Russian tank. Oh, right on the base of that turret. That's a pretty good hit.
The building is smoking. It's simmering.
Oh, it's cooking now. Hey, look, it's a pressure cooker. Hey, we cook up.
Hey, it's a blast furnace. Hey, Ukraine steel. Yeah.
We cook up rice in that thing. We can also see a humpback Hamas, but it's about to. It should get blown up right there. They are now going to hit the BTR-80 blade.
Down with the Hamas.
And we can now see a nice smoke billowing from the rooftop like a nice chimney cooking the fan meats. And we can see here the Ukrainians come into ammunition box of the house. They're about to blow up whole thing. Boop, and there we go. A whole building go up in flame. We can see another tank right here about to get the tank right into the net. We can also see another main battle tank here getting hit. We can see them continuing to get hit time and time again. And we see them getting hit once more. Fire smoking from back of tank as it gets hit very hard.
This looks like a drone view from like Afghanistan or something, like on a compound.
Man, honestly, man, it looks like one of those drone views from COD.
Man, you sure are mentioning COD a lot.
That's because Matthew and me have been playing COD. And honestly, folks, I got to say that's like the easiest first-person shooter game I've ever played. It was a lot easier than I thought it would be because I always heard that COD was full of sweats. Apparently, when I get in there, and Matthew can vouch for it, I'm the sweat because I'll end up at the end of the round with like 50 kills and like on the top of the leaderboard on the score. It's weird, and I'm enjoying the game because I'm absolutely going off on it, and I'm not even really trying too hard. But moving on from that, and down near the area of Pokrovsk, we also got to see the Russians getting hit down here. Take a gander. The Russians lost a 2S1 Gazivka here in this area. I cook. Dang, man, that thing be cooking up like some fresh steel.
Man.
And Matthew said, enforcer humble brag in chat. Look,
Man, you are humble bragging.
Look, man, you cannot lie, dude. At the end of every match, I'm either second to the top or I am on the top of the leaderboard. Even in ground war, man, with like 32 people on our team, I ended up at the top of the leaderboard.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean,
I'm like usually right there with you too.
Man, Matthew he's right there with me. Right there, right across. We also get to see in the next clip here, the next one, that we get to see them hitting the Russian forces near to Shevchenko. The 68th Jaeger Brigade was the one doing this.
Also, I see a lot of people mentioning Call of Cheaters. Honestly, I've noticed like some interesting behavior in COD, like online. It seems like there are some people like using some assistance or something because there's some funny business going on in there. It seems a little bit weird.
I'll be honest with y'all, folks. I still actually enjoy. I find COD fun because I'm having an easy time with it, but I still enjoy other first-person shooters way more than that one, like Squad, 6 Days in Fallujah, Asanzo Verdun, even Tannenberg, which is all right. I find those games a lot more fun because they're a lot more challenging, and they also seem to me to be a good bit more realistic. Like, for example, in Asanzo, you don't have to get shot 30 times to die, and you can't just hide in a corner with jelly eyes until your health heals after getting shot 7 times. You get shot once in Asanzo, and you're just dead. You just fall over dead in that game from one bullet. So that's what I like about those games. It actually is truly challenging, and you actually have to be pretty good to survive. And that's why I credit for being good in Call of Duty for is that in Asanzo, you just don't have the option of dying. If you die, you're doing terribly. But moving on, also Hell Let Loose is great, by the way, as well, Frankie Payne. And also, Postscriptum was pretty good when it was good. Now it's not really that great anymore. They're trying to come back, but not really too well. But those are great games, too. We also got to see a Ukrainian soldier taking evasive actions during an FPV drone strike. We see them driving down the street here, and it appears that they spot the drone. We now see them popping out as quick as they can, and running into the trees as the vehicle gets hit. They were very lucky to get out in time. You see them all
generally okay.
I think it's the giant array of electronic warfare devices that were on top of that truck that might have helped. Just an idea. I didn't see that in the first time I watched this clip, but the second go around, that's like 13 different electronic warfare antennas. I think that's why it survived.
Probably so, but what did the drone do? Just like implode like above the truck or something? Because it looked like it hit it.
I think it veered off course and exploded on the street to the left or right somewhere.
Interesting. Yeah, the truck's just totally fine, which is kind of shocking.
Yeah, that's actually pretty crazy. And now they're going to get back on the way. That was the end of the clip, but still pretty cool to see. Moving on from that and into the southern side of Pokrovsk, we also got to see the 68th Jaeger continuing to hit and destroy Russian equipment over the past 48 hours. And that appears to be a lot of pickup. That was terrible. That should have been in a Rodnik segment.
Why does this look like a carrot on a stick or something that's pointing out from this drone? That looks odd.
Yeah, it does look a little odd. And we see them continuing to hit the Russian forces. And look at them go. They are hitting them hard.
Oh, look, is that a Blyad barn? That looks like one of those tanks.
It does look like one of them. I think it is actually, as a matter of fact, a shed, Blyad.
Damn,
Oh.
those have kind of gone away a little bit. I'm not sure if they stopped using them or what, but they seem to be a little bit more rare these days on the battlefield.
I think they found out that that design is pretty much obsolete. It doesn't really do much to protect the tank or the crew.
Yeah, I would say so. It also restricts the turret a hell of a lot. Seems pointless.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, it was a pretty stupid modification in the first place, and I think they finally learned their lesson on that one. We see right here that down here it says, CD, charge ready. Well, that's great to know that they're charging for CDs in Ukraine. But moving on from that and on into our next clip further down the line and into the area of Velika Novosilka, we also got to see that the Ukrainians were hitting on them Russian grads. They're lining that boy up.
Got to go on for a final approach. And here they go. I mean, call him a pilot, but it looks like they're going for a dive bombing.
I mean, he might not be the next Sully Sullenberger, but whoa. Look at that landing.
God. Dang. That was a huge shockwave off of that.
I mean, you know, this guy isn't Ram Sambani, but I mean, whoa. Look at that explosion from that landing. I mean, you know, he might have missed the landing, but whoa, pretty big explosion.
I
That
mean,
was a shockwave.
He didn't land in the Hudson, but looks like he caused the Hudson.
I mean, you know, he didn't really land it in the Twin Towers, but he sure as hell made a big explosion. That was actually a slip up.
That scared me. That one right there. That was scaring me.
But anyways, that's the end of the clip right there. And moving on from that and further down the lines and into the area of Bielorussia, we also get to see a motorbike assault that was stopped dead in its tracks by the Ukrainians. Here's the Russian. He's trying to grab the motorbike. Oh, and there he is. He's on the dirt bike.
Oh, he's going for it. He's cutting straight through there.
Oh, bro, he just ran
had a
over the
stump.
wire. He just ran over the wire and had an instant arrest. That's what that's called. Man, not a good day for him. But moving on from that and on to the next clip near the Robotny, we also get to see them hitting the Russians. But apparently that clip was a little spicy, so we won't be showing that one. Meanwhile, we did get to see them hunting down the Russians. This Russian was equipped with a shotgun. Oh, he's trying to hit the drone. That little fella's flying, man. That thing's going like 60.
That's one of those racers.
He's missing every shot. His shotgun's now out of ammo, so he's decided to make a run for it instead. I mean, you know, he might not be the next Jerry Michalik, but, whoa, look at that aim. It's flying over him as he's casually loading his shotgun.
This would be so horrifying to deal with this in person. Like these little drones racing around. You're trying to shoot it with a shotgun or something. Seems impossible. That's just horrifying.
It really does seem horrifying. But hey, it's the Russian way of life in Ukraine. This guy's breathing heavy.
Nobody would have ever thought that hobby drones would become everybody's worst nightmare one day.
Man, everybody gangsta till a hobby drone starts singing.
Oh, man. That thing is fast as hell.
Dude, this is ridiculous. This video is 4 minutes long, by the way, of them trying to shoot this thing down. Here it comes again. And there it goes.
Oh.
Well, you're
This is
just
crazy. Like, the Ukrainians are obviously just trying to wear them down so that way they stop looking at it so much, so that way they can go in for the final hit. That's crazy.
Oh, and it appears that there was an impact.
Сука.
What the hell is that?
Пизда нахуй.
Looks like the other side of the street's on fire now.
It's like a little thermite or something.
There they go, running past a Chinesium golf cart that was destroyed.
Уебало. Идем пешком, блядь.
You know, this right here really shows why it's going to be super important for the United States to have really good EW, like for personal EW for soldiers. Because this right here, if the Russians had something to properly like jam that drone, that would be a humongous advantage, like for these soldiers to be able to carry around.
Yeah, also, you got to factor in the fiber optic drones as well that don't get interfered with by electronic warfare measures. So you'd have to also make a defense measure for those as well.
Yeah, probably like a specialized like shotgun shell that has like an expandable net. Where because obviously trying to shoot it with one little small bullet, that's nearly impossible. Or even buckshot, that's sort of difficult if it's moving that fast. So if you had like a pretty large net you could fire out of the shotgun, that could be a little bit of an advantage, but not much.
Possibly. That's actually an interesting idea. Well, you now see them making the walk away from their destroyed vehicle. And all the other destroyed vehicles on the street.
Ебать, она, сука, кошмарит, мразь. Я же говорил, мне... Надо быстрее уебывать, нахуй, он лесополк. Есть у меня пару пачек. Все сумки уебал.
So where the hell are they going now? It's just walking down an empty road to nowhere at this point.
Man, they're walking off into the sunset quite literally. It's the end of the movie.
Да, все целы, идем.
It would suck to be a Russian in Ukraine. It's absolutely suck. And also, these guys right here are not going to survive. It's like their time is very limited.
Also, this guy's wearing sneakers.
He's not very sneaky, though.
And this guy's also schnotting.
Садись, надо было пережидать и ехать. Все патроны выстрелил нахуй. Осталось чуть-чуть.
Ебать, я эту потерял.
Вот. Там что-то, блядь. Тихо.
Now, well, that's the end of the clip, but it appears that they weren't able to defend against that drone all too well. Meanwhile, further on down near the Kakovka, we also get to see the Ukrainians found a Russian position and quickly got rid of it. There it is. When you see a Russian walking around there. This is sped up footage, by the way. That's why he looks like a Charlie Chaplin character. But he's now going into the outpost in the trees, and the Ukrainians yelling, "The trees! They're speaking Russian!" And so they're about to hit him with hammers, actually.
With hammers, depending on whose hammers they are, that could be very expensive.
Yeah, look at that. I mean, there they go. There's the hammers.
Those are those $5,000 hammers they talk about in the U.S. military.
Oh, yes. And there they go. Well worth their money, $5,000 for that.
Got to drop some nuts and washers on them.
Man, you know they ought to drop like a little speaker system, man, before they drop the nuts, so that way they can get that guy who sat there and did the slap chop commercial and just have it on loop. You're gonna love my nuts. You're gonna love my nuts before like the bomb comes in or the nuts or whatever.
Man.
Moving on, man, I got to tell you, man, he may have said in that infomercial that you were gonna love his nuts, but apparently someone else didn't, and that's why he went to prison.
A documentary.
Man, dude, he sat there. He whipped out that line to that worker of the night out there in the street. He's like, "Oh yeah, $20, you're gonna love my nuts." And then he went to prison for it. I was like, dude, you did an infomercial on something like that. It's like, why the hell would you go and do that? Man, honestly, tough times for that guy. Tough times indeed. But moving on from that and all that silliness, it's time for us to get on up to Kyiv and cover the speech of President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day 1,191 of the war. And this was a little bit lengthy enough to go get a snack and some water. And so with that, here is the speech. Peach!
Speech!
Здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Сьогодні було багато всього протягом дня і у внутрішній роботі, і у зовнішній. Візит в Україну міністра закордонних справ Туреччини. Ми обговорили з ним дипломатію, обговорили всі можливості, які реально є та які повинні бути. Зараз, якщо чесно, ані ми в Україні, ані Туреччина, як приймаюча сторона, не маємо жодної інформації про російський так званий меморандум. Росіяни чомусь приховують свій цей документ. Абсолютно дивна, якщо чесна, позиція, жодного розуміння формату. Мабуть, вони в Москві взагалі відвикли від дипломатії. Постійно вони щось роблять таке, щоб довести, що саме вони найбільш неадекватний суб'єкт в світі. Але саме це і переконує усіх, що новий тиск потрібен. Тиск на Росію. Сьогодні також запланована розмова у мене з президентом Туреччини Ердоганом. Пробуємо додати реальний зміст у можливу зустріч. Жоден день не має втрачатись, бо кожен день підриву росіянами дипломатії – це втрачені життя людей. Сьогодні ж була зустріч з американськими сенаторами Гремом та Блюменталем. Хороша зустріч. Я дякую за цю підтримку України, за двопартійну підтримку, за підтримку дипломатії та намагання внести моральну ясність в ситуацію. Саме Росія почала цю війну, саме Росія повинна припинити вбивства. Вбивства та руйнування життя. І дуже важливо, коли це звучить у медіа, звучить у Конгресі, звучить в усіх впливових кабінетах світу. Якщо і надалі Росія буде говорити мовою ультиматумів, якщо вони намагатимуться шантажувати продовженням війни, Росія повинна отримати сильну відповідь Сполучених Штатів Америки, відповідь Європи, відповідь кожного в світі, хто хоче миру. І хто, до речі, заявляв про підтримку для припинення вогню та дипломатії. Дякую всім в Америці, хто працює заради достойного і чесного миру. І миру якнайшвидше. Сьогодні ж разом з міністром закордонних справ Сибігою та командою Офісу президента скоординували зустрічі, скоординували перемовини наступного тижня з нашими партнерами по Європейському Союзу. На всіх напрямках робити максимальні активні дії. І це завдання для всіх. І ще важливе. Доволі довго і, на жаль, більше просто за інерцією, ніж щиро, в Україні 1 червня відзначався День захисту дітей. Хоча щороку все більше і більше громадських організацій, освітніх інституцій приділяли увагу саме Всесвітньому дню дитини, який відзначається восени 20 листопада. Я підписав указ, який синхронізує українську практику зі світовою. Саме 20 листопада була ухвалена Декларація прав дитини в 1959 році та Конвенція ООН про права дитини в 1989 році. Але що ми зробимо вже скоро, у червні, в перших числах червня, так це почнемо нагороджувати і не тільки дорослих, які проявили себе, але й дітей. Хоробрість українських дітей, стійкість, часто дорослість наших дітей точно заслуговують на визнання, на вдячність. В Україні буде спеціальна відзнака «Майбутнє України», і ми з Оленою будемо вручати її вперше наступного тижня найбільш сміливим нашим хлопчикам і дівчаткам, тим, хто допоміг порятунку людей, хто проявив власну надзвичайну стійкість, яким ми всі можемо тільки пишатись. Наступного тижня особисто подякуємо їм від імені всієї України, зробимо таку відзнаку, таку подяку нашою новою традицією. Дякую всім, хто з Україною. Дякую всім, хто захищає нашу державу і всіх наших людей. Слава Україні!
Herom Slava. And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day 1191 of the news from around the world. And that's going to be moving us on to the second segment where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And boy, howdy, what a fun segment it's going to be. We get to talk about literally anything and everything with y'all during this segment. The news is over, so we can just get to sit back and chit-chat with all of y'all. Every single one of you. And I also saw someone here, someone in the chat named Clark said, Zelenskyy is the one who played piano with his stuff. Not me. Don't believe me? Look it up. And I just got to ask, Clark, I got to ask you a question. If someone paid you $1 million to go up on stage and play a piano with your crutch, would you say no?
I would say no. I think I would say no.
I mean, most people might say no, but some others would say, "Oh hell yeah, I'd do that." And he was one of those people. So
when you're an alpha chat like Zelenskyy, you don't turn down offers. You go on that grind. You go on that what do they call it? They call it the alpha male grind or something like that. What's it called? That grind set. That's it. Yeah, the grind set.
It's the absolute grind set. You have to be on it to be on my level. Some people say I would be scared to play a piano with my stuff, and to that I say, you are a coward. I can play Moonlight Sonata with mine. Why don't you get on my level, huh?
Oh, man. That Zelenskyy said, I have an upcoming show. I'm going to play piano with Willie. And they said, who's Willie? Oh, you'll see.
They call him Steamboat Willie, the way he be chuffing.
Honestly, that was a bit out there. I'm not going to lie. Like, that was a bit out there. But that was his career, though. Like, he was in comedy. So that was a little out there even for comedy. But, you know, that doesn't discredit him being a good president. Like, you know, we've had an actor as a president before. And, you know, it was debatable whether or not he was, like, a good president or not. But, you know, we've had actors, too. So it happens.
Well, I have to say, Nancy, that I don't like that indirect insult at me. And you can kiss my ass. We also currently have a president who was in reality TV. And if you look back at his history, there's some very questionable things that were also done in the pursuit of reality television. But sometimes, being in that kind of an industry, it's about shock value. We kind of know, because just covering the news, people are actually more attracted to news that has shock value. We don't get to do that every night, but whenever there's news that does have shock value to it, like, for example, the massive classified information leak from inside of Russia, people flock in. Like, people flock in because they want to hear crazy stuff. You know, they don't want to hear everything that's just mundane and normal. So when people are into comedy and stuff, like our, well, not really comedy, but reality TV or comedy like our current president, the president of Ukraine, they're going to end up doing things that may not look that serious or may look a little bit silly. And if you don't believe me, just go pull up some of the stuff that the current president of the U.S. did. I mean, he did stuff that was equally silly or weird. Like, you know, Matthew, that one with you know the one I'm talking about, Matthew, the one in the department store with Giuliani dressed as a woman or something.
Oh yeah, it was like that drag episode or whatever.
Yeah,
you know, I don't know what that was about. To be honest,
I don't know what that was about.
Well, they weren't. Neither one of them were really in the comedy profession, so I'm not sure what that was about. But you know, I guess you know, it's all in good fun.
I don't know. That was weird, I will admit. But I don't really think it has anything to do with someone exacting policy. I mean, like as you could tell, I mean, you know, we'll just leave it at that. We'll leave it at that. You know, just to say touche, kind of fair play thing. Everyone who's into the reality TV comedy kind of thing, they all end up doing some weird stuff. Although me personally, I can play for Elise with my stuff. Can yours do that? I don't think so. So sit your ass back down. and let me continue to be the real one, the real OG. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on into the question segment, and we get to talk to each and every one of you like I always wanted to. And so with that, I understand that we have one last poll to cover, and I want to make sure that we talk about it. Germany says it doesn't rule out giving Taurus missiles to Ukraine. Is Germany going to back out? And it appears that some are saying that the Germans are just being secretive. Others are saying that Germany will back out of it. And some people are saying it's a 50-50 chance. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this? And what are you thinking about it?
So 44% said no, Germany is just being secretive, while 27% said yes, Germany will back out on the Taurus commitment, and 23% said it's a 50-50 chance right now. And I would say this, I think Germany is just trying to be very secretive about it. They've already classified weapon shipments to Ukraine, so that's already a pretty big indicator that Germany's not going to make that public. And also they're being very evasive. They're saying they're not confirming or denying that they've been sent, and they're also not ruling it out or ruling it in. So the whole theme is evasion, and I think that's very clearly for a reason. Germany wants to send them and probably is going to send them, if not, maybe already have, and they're simply not telling anybody. So that's what's going on. I don't think they're going to back out. And in fact, I would say the odds of Germany backing out on that is very, very low. Probably like 20%, maybe possibility of them backing out. I would say it's almost a certainty they're going to get sent, but the timeline's uncertain, and also we're not going to get a public acknowledgement of it. So I'm with the 43%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say, in my opinion, I'd be with 43% as well. I think the Germans are just being super secret and aren't being, aren't trying to deny the Ukrainians access to the Taurus, because we do have to remember that all of their arms shipments from here forward are going to be classified. So with that, I hope that has addressed it the best I can, and it's time for us to get on into those questions. And what do we got, Matthew? What do we got?
All right, so jumping right back into our super chat questions proper. Our first one here of the last segment goes to Margaret Hemsley, longtime channel viewer, and puts in a $31 donation. And thank you very much, Margaret, for that support. And it's very generous of you. And she said, I got paid. Woo! And also, May 29th, 1905, a Russian Navy defeated by Japan. 1911, first Indianapolis 500 run. And 1917 is JFK's date of birth. And in 1953, Hillary in Norway reached summit of Mount Everest.
And wow, you're doing a day in history. That's actually pretty cool, Margaret Hemsley. And yes, the Russians were defeated navally by the Japanese at the Battle of Tsushima. And this is actually a Japanese painting of the battle by Tojo Chitaro. It's actually quite an interesting battle, because one thing that's interesting about it, incredibly interesting about it, is that it was the first time that Japan actually engaged any major world power in a naval battle. And they won hands down. I don't think they lost any major ships. The Russians pretty much lost the whole fleet, the Baltic fleet, that is. And it didn't go well for them. Also, by the way, another interesting thing that y'all see here is that one of the Russian fleets actually took a voyage all the way from Europe around Africa and then all the way over here. And another thing that y'all notice, another interesting thing that y'all should notice, is that they had a layover in Madagascar of approximately 3 months. They were there for a long time, and it's because they got some contradictory orders. They had to sit around and wait for a while. So the crew, while in Madagascar, stocked up. So when they went into the Battle of Tsushima, there were pet anacondas on board, pet gators, and all kinds of other stuff on a lot of these warships that were present at the Battle of Tsushima on these vessels. A little bit interesting about that. Not a lot of people know about that part of the story, but it was an absolute disaster, and they almost started an entire issue. Let me see here. Let me see if they talk about the prelude here. Yeah. Here we go. Do they talk about the part where they fired at British fishing ships in the Strait of Dover because they thought that they were Japanese vessels? It doesn't appear that they did. Yeah, it doesn't appear that they did. So, when this fleet was making its way to the Battle of Tsushima, about right here in the Strait of Dover, they came up on a bunch of British fishing vessels that were in the area trying to fish, and because the Russians were so ill-informed, is probably the best way to put it, even back then. For some reason, they believed that all of the fishing vessels in the Strait of Dover were Japanese, trawlers, and they started firing at all of them, although they were flying the British ensign off of the back. So, a little bit interesting with that. They almost started a war with Britain over that one, because it was such a bad incident. But they kept on going on their merry way. Beyond that, I do thank you for sharing that. And also, Matthew, what was one of the other days in history that they added in there?
They said 1953, Norway reached summit of Mount Everest.
Oh, that's pretty cool. And what was another one, Matthew? What was another one?
1917 is JFK's date of birth.
19. Wow, he was born on the year that America went into World War I. That's actually pretty interesting there. You know, we still have a Kennedy around. You know, crazily enough, he doesn't talk like the original Kennedy. You know,
Hello.
The other one's like, we do things not because they're easy, but because they are hard. Meanwhile, the current one, I have to put sunflower seed oil in the hamburgers. You know, and so it's a little different, but kind of the same thing almost. Not really. But beyond that, I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Margaret Hemsley, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible and keep it running. So a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Wubba, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you, Wubba, as well, for always supporting the channel all the time and helping to keep us running every single night, except for last night. That is the only exception. But Wubba said, peace sells, but who's buying?
Nobody's buying these days. Everyone wants a wire. And then America doesn't want to go to war, so then that actually spurns more war, which is actually kind of the funny thing about it. But I would have to say, I don't think anyone's buying peace anymore. And so with that, I got to thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least in my opinion, Webbit. But I do thank you for always supporting this channel and helping to keep rolling, because folks like you have made this thing a reality for years now. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, I was just thinking, peace sells, but who's buying? Like, honestly, there's really nothing to buy with peace, because if you're somebody who's like a psychopath and you're in charge of a country, what does peace really bring you? It really brings you nothing, because psychopaths like to look for the next way to get control of others. So it's like peace, there's nothing to buy. It's like a nothing burger to a psychopath. So they have to create the chaos. They have to create the next big thing. And it doesn't matter how many people are going to suffer. They're going to create it because the thing that sells to them is power. So they're trying to buy it. And that means arming themselves to the teeth. That means going and aggressing on people and also manipulating the hell out of countries until they can finally slam the door shut, which is pretty much what every major country's done, like Russia and China and the United States even. It's just the way it works, which is kind of crazy. But anyways, enough opining about that. We're moving on to our next super chat, which goes to Sexual Tyrannosaurus, who puts a $20 donation. And thank you very much, my interesting Tyrannosaurus friend, for that support. They said, thanks, Andrew and Matthew, for all you do. And my question is, how many anti-aircraft systems do you think Russia still has? And also, my name is from the movie Predator. And y'all seem weirded out by it in my last super chat question. And I did.
And I thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep running. I don't know how that's from the movie Predator. I've never actually watched the movie Predator. It's like the movie Predator about some sort of like a tyrannosaurus.
That's a different type of predator.
I think that's like the what's his name, man? Like Jared from Subway kind of Predator movie, maybe. Like it's like not a good one. But beyond that, I do thank you for the support. And that is a very technical question coming from someone whose username is Sexual Tyrannosaurus. I was honestly expecting like a whole like shtick or a joke, but you actually asked a legitimate question. I gotta say, I appreciate the legitimate question. That's actually a good one. We wouldn't be able to know the exact number, but based on our best estimations, they are down about 60% of the anti-aircraft systems that they had at the start of the conflict. So, saying that, it's somewhere in the few hundreds, around 200 to 300 left, which sounds like a lot. It really isn't a lot, because a lot of those systems are Pantsirs, Tors, and Tunguskas, or some other similar variant of that. And so that would be kind of my answer to that, around 200 to 300. Also, John Murray said, you guys have never seen Predator? Unsub. I don't know if you're serious about that. Hopefully you're joking, because that'd be a really sad reason to unsubscribe from the channel. But no, I never saw Predator. In fact, we didn't really see a lot of anything growing up. We kind of grew up in a household where a lot of things were just pretty much... we were pretty much told that we just could never look at them, maybe even if we wanted to. You know, we were kind of in the place where, you know, you get told that, like, Harry Potter's, like, the work of the demons or something, and if you watch Harry Potter, your soul's going to be stolen, that kind of stuff. So we didn't really get watch a lot of anything growing up. And then, you know, but usually we were kind of, you know, having to, whether we wanted to or not, bust our ass through our lives so fast and so quickly that we really didn't have a lot of time to just kind of sit around and watch movies. That's kind of why my big pastime is playing a video game, because usually I only have small intermittent periods of time throughout most of my life to do anything, and so that was kind of what I had to do. So yeah, I didn't really get to watch anything. I mean, you know, sorry I wasn't raised the right way, where I didn't get to sit around for hours and and watch stuff because, you know, we were probably, you know, having to be forced to do something or something else. But beyond that, I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, hey, you know, we wouldn't be able to feel bad about not having any free time in our childhood. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. Also, by the way, if they ever make a Diddy documentary and they call it Predator, that'll be the worst thing in cinema history if they do that, because it's going to get confused with the other one. Anybody's going to be like, "Hey, have you watched that movie Predator?" And like, what, the Diddy one or the other one?
Dude,
that would be unfortunate.
I know what a Diddy documentary is going to be called. It's going to be "Woke Up in the Morning." ... That's what it's going to be. Like that's what the documentary's name is going to be, because that's his most famous song, right? Well, not his most famous song. Most famous song about him. Woke up in the morning feeling like P. Diddy. Like everyone said that like in the early 2010s. So I have a feeling that probably would be like the title. Maybe, I don't know.
Maybe there's no telling, honestly. But I think the movie might be called Pardon, because it sounds like he's sort of getting lined up for a presidential pardon coming up here soon. It was possible. Yeah, it was discussed today. It was said that Diddy likes me. Might have to think about it and stuff like that.
No, he shouldn't get a pardon. What the hell? Like, there's like an insurmountable pile of evidence against him.
Yeah, and also, how can he be pardoned? Well, I say that, but I was about to say, well, how can he be pardoned if he hadn't been convicted of anything yet? But I guess you could preemptively pardon him, I guess, or give him like immunity, I guess you could say. I'm not sure how that would work, but I guess you could. But yeah, I don't until he gets like convicted and actually, gets a due process, I'm not sure if pardoning him ahead of time is a good idea, because all the people that he allegedly did something to, it's like that's not really justice per se. That's letting him off the hook.
Yeah, that's pretty messed up. I mean, it's not a question that he didn't do anything. He did. Like everyone in Hollywood has come out now and said, yeah, he was doing that stuff all the time. Like, didn't you hear, Matthew, about Denzel Washington? He said something like, like everyone said, oh yeah, he would get up and leave once he heard Diddy was coming, because he said you don't want to be around when the devil's here, because he knew what he was up to.
Oh man, everybody knew what Diddy was up to, man. Everybody knew it, but everybody kept quiet though, because Diddy had a lot of power in that entertainment industry. So if you went against Diddy, it was like going against like the gang or something like that. That's at least what people say. And if you went against him and said anything about what he was possibly doing, then that was going to be out for you. You were going to be pretty much put out.
Yeah, it's like if that, like, I feel like that's an usurpation of the judicial system. It's like they should go ahead with a trial, and if he's convicted, he's convicted. Like, no one's above the law. That's pretty much saying, if you're wealthy enough in this country and you have enough swag, you can just get pardoned for endless amounts of sexual assault on people, which I think is a pretty bad precedent to lay out there for people, is that if you get wealthy enough and powerful enough, you can quite literally do stuff in broad daylight and everyone can know about it, and you'll never be held accountable for your own actions, which are criminal.
Well, they just amass so much power. Like they're so entrenched, like with so many different powerful people, it's hard to like necessarily hold them accountable, because they have like blackmail on certain people. They were involved with certain other powerful people that might not want to be prosecuted or sentenced or something. There's just such a big web with that. That's the danger of people like Diddy and also Epstein, is they have such a large web they've created on purpose and deliberately that it's hard to really pin them down. But it'll have to be seen whether or not he gets pinned down or not. But he might be able to get loose on this one.
Yeah. Possibly so. But it's a little bit interesting to me though, man. Like, I just got to say here, a little bit of a juxtaposition here. So when like I don't want to say it like this, but this is how I'm looking at it. So when Epstein did something, it's wrong, but when Diddy does something, he gets a pass, and it's almost the same thing. Like, there's not really too much of a difference between the two, but Diddy gets a pass and Epstein didn't. It's like, it seems like we're having a little bit of a double standard here based on who the diddler is politically aligned to. Like, it's like that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. Like, just putting it that way, it's like shouldn't it be kind of across the board? Like that's how.
Who said Epstein didn't get a pass?
Oh, well, hell, like, well, with the whole, you know what I mean, Matthew, the releasing of the list, the whole thing was redacted, it's like, oh, so, like, everyone who was involved in that, they get a pass, but then, but then Diddy, well, actually, well, he didn't, well, yeah, I mean, that's honestly a good point right there, but, well, let's put it the other way, though. Epstein didn't get a pass, he went to prison, and then he ended up dying in prison, but then Diddy will? It's like, that still doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure if Epstein got a pass or not. I'm not really sure.
Well, no, he didn't. He didn't get a pass. That's what I just said. He didn't get a pass. Like,
depends on who you believe.
What do you?
I'm
Oh,
talking about
dude.
conspiracy theories.
Oh, you're talking about, like, I didn't even know what the hell you're talking about because I don't even know the conspiracy theories. I was sitting there the whole time in a mind warp.
You
Like,
didn't wait a minute. You didn't know about the one about Epstein didn't die and all that stuff. The whole like thing like that. Like they said because the surveillance cameras were out the day that he got allegedly knocked off and or he died. Like I think suddenly in the New York jail. And the surveillance cameras were turned off. Nobody got to see what happened, and the guards suddenly got a little bit quiet about the whole thing. So people have always said Diddy didn't get knocked out into prison. He just simply walked free. That's the theory.
Dude, the only one I knew is that people were saying that he didn't kill him. He didn't take himself out. Yeah, someone else took him out. That's the only conspiracy theory I knew. I never knew about the other ones. So I was completely confused the whole time. I was like, well, he didn't get away with anything. He got put in prison and then he died in there. But with Diddy though, it's like so he's just going to get to go scot free. Like we're all for like. Not we, but the specific people in charge right now are all against exploitation like that until it's Diddy, and then he might get a pass. It's like that's just not really a good thing to say. It's like if I was the president, I would say that's not my position to say the courts in whatever state he's being held accountable in are going to decide whether he's guilty or not, and I'm going to step out of the way and let the judicial system do its thing. That's what I'd say. I wouldn't float the idea of giving him a pardon.
You gotta admit though, that's crazy. Like speaking of like Diddy and Epstein, like the level of that, like deliberately not just doing it to like people around you, but going out on a public level and trying to entrap people like that by bringing them in and then putting them in vulnerable positions, possibly filming it and then using it as blackmail potentially. That's getting on another tier right there. That's like something pretty wild. And also, not only are they doing it to people, they're doing it to some of the most powerful people as well, and under the guise of like doing parties and things like that. It's just kind of a little bit wild.
Yeah, it is. It is pretty wild, and it's like we shouldn't be standing for that kind of stuff on a governmental level ever. It's entirely criminal in every degree. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Zyper Sniper 1, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Zyper Sniper, for always supporting the channel as well. And we do appreciate it very much. And he said, pizza or donut fun for the enforcers. And I might be gone a while from the 3rd of June to the 21st of June because I'm going to watch the Counter-Strike 2 Austin Major at that time and LSA forever.
Oh, dang. Well, have fun with that. That sounds like it's going to be pretty cool, Sniper Sniper. I got to thank you for the support, and thank you for supporting the pizza and donut fun. And I hope that you enjoy your time while you're gone from the 3rd of June to the 21st, because that sounds like it's going to be an incredibly fun little event right there. And so a massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, someone said, Matt, that's a technique used in spycraft called a honeypot. That it's somewhat similar to that, like the honeypot thing that's usually or used to be used at least. Allegedly, it's not used anymore. Yeah, the honey thing it's supposed to not be used anymore. China still uses it, but the Americans we don't. At least publicly, we don't admit that. But you send out an attractive female to entrap typically a male individual that's the target of an intel investigation. And you'll send out a female to obviously try to seduce the male into having a relationship. They'll try to get something on camera that's, obviously if the individual is like nude or something like that. And then that intel agency will use that footage to then blackmail that individual into giving over state secrets, whatever they're trying to procure from that individual. That's what used to happen back in the day. We aren't supposed to be doing that anymore, but China still does that quite heavily. Like that is something that China does all the damn time today. Like that is 100% sanctioned by China. And they do it all the time. And I think a congressman got caught up in something like that I think a year or two ago. He got caught up in that and got snagged in it. I don't know if he gave away any secrets or not. Like, I don't think anybody figured that out, but he got all tangled up in a relationship with this spy that was spying for China. So that's the really dirty side of it right there. And honestly, on that one, depending on what they're trying to get, that's a bit of an interesting, like kind of dark tactic right there, depending on what they're trying to get information for. If it's something that saves a lot of people's lives, I might be able to understand it, but that's a doozy.
I would have to say, another interesting thing, a little bit of a cool story with that, while someone, apparently an expert came in and told us we're wrong and everything, so they're gone, is that actually happened, Matthew, to the Prime Minister of Indonesia back in the 60s. Actually, I think it was the 70s. Did you know that, Matthew?
Which country again? Say again?
Indonesia.
I don't recall that one.
Well, you don't recall it because it's a bit of a small one, because it didn't turn out too well. So the Soviet Union was trying to get Indonesia more under the Soviet pocket than the American pocket, and they found out that one of the weak links in the government would be the prime minister himself. So they sent a couple of women to him, and they did some stuff. They got it all on film, and then a couple of weeks later, the letters written to him saying, "Look, we got you on film doing all these things in this hotel room with these women. You need to start giving into our demands, or we're going to start putting this out there." And they actually sent him in the letter a copy, like a VH. It wasn't a VHS. It was whatever it was before VHS. It was like a film copy of the actual film. And so he looked at it and he wrote back to the person, "Wow, this is great. Can you make multiple copies of this? Like, if you put this out here in public in Indonesia, people are going to love this. Like, my popularity is going to skyrocket." So it completely failed. Like, the Soviets didn't get anywhere with it. And the only reason that that's known now is because when the Soviet Union collapsed, the KGB was destroying a lot of their documents, but those were not destroyed. And everyone actually found out that they tried that on the Indonesian prime minister. And he just... it may have been a bluff, but he just absolutely accepted it and owned it, and they just gave up because they were like, "Oh, we might not make it anywhere with this guy. They might put that out. He's not ashamed of it at all. He's actually proud of it, so we can't really get anywhere with this guy." Honestly, a really badass response from that guy. He handled that like a champion.
Well, yeah, obviously it wasn't good what he was doing. Like, obviously that wasn't great. But at the same time, though, it's like that's the only way to deal like with a blackmail situation like that is to simply say, "Hey, look, if you want to like release something like that, then go right ahead." It's like, who's going to be watching that, by the way? It's like, what does it say about the people that are watching that tape that they filmed to blackmail the guy? It's like, it's like that's not something to watch in the first place. But it's like also number two, if you react to it, this honey trap like this right here, if you react to it by saying, oh please don't release it, please don't do anything, then they got you by the balls basically at that point, because they're going to run you through the ringer if you start doing that. So you can't like approach it from that direction. But it'd probably be better just not to do that stuff to begin with. It'd probably be a much better. But people will make mistakes sometimes. Things like that happen, and then they get snagged.
Yeah, that's true. But still, that one was a pretty funny one, man. I always remember that story because it's a wild one to hear that they literally gave up after he said that. Like, apparently that was just a way out, man. Like, if they had done that to the president of the United States, and it was like, Kennedy, who, is pretty commonly known to be, probably susceptible to that sort of thing. If he just sat there and said, I did it not because she was easy, did that, they'd be like, "Oh, we give up. We're just moving on. We're not even going to try and move forward with that." But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. Interesting story about that whole deal. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Jocelyn White, also a longtime channel legend, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Josh, as well, for that support. And Josh said, "Thanks for the news," and LLT LSA, and take a question from that chat.
And a big thank you to you for supporting that channel, Jocelyn White, and enjoying it. And a big sorry for not saying hello to you at the beginning of the stream. For about a minute or two there at the start, I was trying to fix a technical issue, and I saw all the hellos coming in, but I couldn't respond to all of them, and you were one of them. I'm very sorry about that, because I always try and respond to every single person in the intro of the stream that's saying hello to me directly. But beyond that, I thank you massively for the support and help with this channel to keep it running. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army, and we will get a live chat in your honor. So what do we got, Matthew?
So the live chat question is going to go to Steve's Gardening Adventures. He said, Matt, why do you think is the reason why we haven't put boots on the ground in Yemen yet? And I would say generally because we generally walked away and gave up. We let the Houthis sort of walk scot-free. The Houthis did agree to stop attacking our commercial vessels, which, we're having to take them at their word on that, which is not very solid. But also they're still attacking Israel, which is our ally in the Middle East. So they're clearly not having a revelation here. They're just simply buying some time like Russia and Iran's doing, and they're doing the same tactic, and they've learned how to play the game. So that's pretty much why. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that in my opinion, it really is because we were scared of getting involved on the ground, and we wanted to walk away because getting on the ground might be a little bit too involved and might not be popular here in the United States. So that would be the reason why. Their response to the Houthis was weak, and it was pretty lame in the first place. And then we didn't even have any follow through once it started to become clear that airstrikes were not working. So I would say that's the reason why we didn't go in on the ground. I thought we should have. I think it's still a great idea. But apparently the powers that be in the government are quite literally scared to deal with house mice. Like they're scared of dealing with a group like the Houthis, which wouldn't be much to deal with at all, even on the ground. And so with
Yeah,
that,
I would say they were a little bit more than house mice. Like I think that's underestimating them a little bit, in my opinion. It turns out the Houthis are actually somewhat resilient because a lot of people, including the U.S. administration, thought that airstrikes of a very significant nature were going to wipe out the Houthis and also cause them to run off and hide. It really didn't cause that. It caused the Houthis to get more emboldened. They simply had basically went underneath the ground and hid in tunnels while the attacks were going on. Then they came right out after they were over and started going right back to their usual behavior. They didn't stop them whatsoever. And in fact, in my opinion, I think it emboldened them to a certain degree, because even though they agreed to stop attacking commercial vessels, they ramped up their attacks on Israel. So it's like they just replaced one avenue with another and kept going. So to me personally, I think they're still quite bad. Actually, it's a real problem. And if you start a ground war over it, we're going to be stuck there for a while. Like it's not going to be a one and done thing, like a quick assault and out. We're going to be there for a minute because that's just the way it works. It's never that simple.
Yeah, but airstrike, like anyone who knows anything, man, would know that airstrikes against a non-conventional force are never going to work. Because the best example of that was the bombing of the Ho Chi Minh Trail during the Vietnam War, and that never worked over years while that was going on. So doing it again and then expecting it to work, I mean, that's quite literally like a 50, 60-year-old mindset that was already disproven by the end of the Vietnam War, that bombing non-conventional forces, hell, it was proven in Afghanistan. We bombed the shit out of the Taliban in Afghanistan, and then they popped right back up when we were leaving and took over the whole country while we were still leaving. It's quite an obvious thing that airstrikes don't do squat to non-conventional forces or asymmetrical forces like these. And so saying we could just bomb them into submission, it was already a senseless sort of a proposition from the outset. And I said that here on the channel. I was like, the last administration bombed them, and it really didn't do anything. So the current administration is coming in and saying that we're going to be really strong and show them what for, and so we're going to bomb them a little extra. And I was like, that's just not going to do anything. You got to get on the ground and deal with them. And like, it doesn't matter if you're going to be there long. If you say that the ends is that they're going to cease to exist, you've got to conduct any means to achieve that end. Like, that's how I look at these kinds of problem-solving things. We don't say we're going to make them cease to exist unless if it gets a little too difficult. Our original objective was the Houthis will cease to exist to be a threat, and the only way that they will cease to exist as a threat is if we completely upend them and destroy them on the ground. And that means if you have to go in on the ground. And the fact that we did, and I think that is a complete lack of follow-through and a complete lack of commitment by the U.S. government, which I think is pretty sad, in my opinion, especially coming from a country as powerful as ours, because we have a coalition of willing countries in the area, the Saudis, the Yemenis, pretty much anyone that's surrounding the Houthis right now that would have helped us to take care of them and would have taken over the long-term dealings and peacekeeping in Western Yemen once we fixed the problem, but then we didn't. I mean, it's not like Iraq or Afghanistan where there's really not a lot of international support beyond just the British, where we're pretty much going to be stuck there for 10 years. I mean, this is an ongoing civil war. We take that area back, we just give it to the Yemeni government, and we let them manage it.
It was a misunderstanding of psychology, I think, because the mindset was, if the United States sends in enough firepower and we blitz them and really make them scared by showing our might with our bombs and our technology, then maybe the Houthis will simply just run off and hide. But that's a complete disconnect from how that group thinks, and from a psychological perspective. The group is ready to martyr themselves at a moment's notice. So you're not dealing with a force that has rationale or logic behind them. You're dealing with a force that's willing to die at a moment's notice just for their cause. So they're not going to run off scared like a Western force would. They're going to stand their ground in the face of a clear death. So, trying to use a psychological edge on them by trying to scare them and bomb them into submission, never going to work in a million years. Doesn't matter if you actually hit them or not. They will always resurge. And in fact, they'll be able to recruit more people because now you've created more martyrs. So that's what I don't get that, because we have people that have served in the military and they have military experience that it's supposed to be advising the current administration. But it's like, we're not making the connection between the psychology of the group. It's like, that's a little bit of a shocking thing to me.
It's really lame, honestly. The reality is that we know the psychology of the group, and that we probably did say at some level that there would have to be a ground invasion to take care of them. But the reality is that, and like, I'm going to say this quite clearly because this is not a political statement. This is just a truthful statement about the current state of the U.S. government. Neither political party wants to get soldiers involved on the ground, because there's a whole bunch of stupid things that are prevailing in America right now. Like, for one, the military is supposed to be a free paycheck, and there's not supposed to be any inherent risk in the jobs. And Like, I just got to say this. I'm very tired of this because this is something that I find to be completely undeserved at this point. The military is not expected to go anywhere because we don't want to put guys in danger. But then if they finally reach the end of their contract and their service and they get out, then we act like they were on the damn beaches in Normandy, like they were getting gunned down by machine guns. It's like we are so scared of sending the military anywhere. It's like why in the world are people who are currently getting out of the military right now, like, who are not at all in a war hardly anywhere, very few of them are. Why in the world are we acting like all of them are going to Fallujah, or the Battle of Bastogne, or the Battle of Aachen, or the beaches of D-Day, or the Battle of the Somme? It's like we're not even doing anything with the military. It's like if we sent them into Yemen, I'd be like, damn. I mean, our troops are doing a great job. You know, they're putting themselves in the line of danger, representing our interests, representing our nation, and making sure that we're protected and that our way of life continues on. I mean, these guys are deserving of a lot of respect. No, the current politicians view the military as almost some different form of like a welfare check. Like, we can't put these people in danger. They are literally just here to collect a check and sit on a base all day 24/7 for the most part. And it's like that's not what the military is for. Like, there's inherent risk in the military. Like, if you were a mother or a father and your kid is in the military and you're worried about their safety, I completely understand that. But at the same time, they're in the military and their job is to go to war. That's the whole point of an armed force. So you kind of have to just live with that concern. Like, you know, and also the people in the military, if they're getting in the military and then they have a gripe or a problem with going to war, maybe they shouldn't have joined the armed forces. Because when we took up this job as a YouTuber, I thought if we ever get large enough and successful, which we did, there's going to be pluses and there's going to be minuses. And all the minuses that I thought were going to pop up came with it. And y'all don't see me for once complaining about them. I mean, we got psychos out there that are still threatening to break into our house and kill us, like y'all saw in the live chat a while ago. It just comes with the territory. I mean, like, this is a great job in many ways, and it's also a dangerous job because it draws out lunatics and creeps by the hundreds. It's just what comes with the job. It's like saying I want to be a firefighter and then whining and complaining that you had to save someone from a burning building. It's like, if you didn't want to do that, why did you become a firefighter? It's kind of like,
I don't think most people that join the military gripe about being deployed or going to fight in a conflict. They don't mind that because obviously they signed up for it. So that'd be a bit crazy to say otherwise. Like for the soldier to say I don't want to fight a war when they signed up to go, you know, do that. I think the main gripe is over the past couple of decades, a lot of the people that have served in the military feel like we've gotten into wars that are unnecessary and gotten into conflicts which really we didn't belong in. And they don't want to repeat that. That's why they're so militant against wanting to go to these conflicts where it's not necessarily directly protecting America. It's more of like an indirect way of protecting America. And they don't want to get involved and embroiled in something that costs lives that's not perceived by the American public as being directly supporting America. It's more like supporting our allies in the Middle East. But in my opinion, that's a bit of a misunderstanding of the way geopolitics works, which I understand the thought behind it. People want to make sure that we're just protecting only American interests, but we are doing that by, you know, going and fighting the Houthis in Yemen because they're attacking our commercial vessels. They're attacking the partners in the Middle East, which could cause us to lose our global hegemony if we don't maintain that. So, you know, I think it's just a misunderstanding of the circumstances, but I also understand at the same time why mothers and fathers don't want their kids being just sent off to random wars because, you know, that's their kid's life.
But that's the position we're in. I mean, it's like, whether people like that or not, that's the position we are in the world. Otherwise, we can just give up our position as a world power and we can end up being a third world nation like many others that really has an insignificant economy, terrible quality of life, living in squalor, and then everyone at that point will be realizing that the good times are gone, and then people will be wanting to send their sons overseas to go fight and get killed, so that way they hopefully can have a little bit of a better quality of life. Kind of like the Russians right now. That's kind of the situation they're in. So, you know, that's kind of my counter. It's like, if you want to live the life you're living right now, sometimes we got to go overseas. We got to get a little violent with people like the Houthis. We have to deal with them. And yeah, some people might get hurt, some people might get killed on our side, but that's the cost of being the forefront country in the world, the global superpower like we are, is that's our business. That's what we have to do to protect ourselves and to protect our interests, because our interests just don't lie within the 50 states and the, I believe, 11 overseas territories that make up the United States. It lies in the entirety of the world. We have operations and business being conducted in the entirety of the globe. So if there's something going on in Yemen, believe it or not, it actually has to do a lot with us. Especially, and another thing that people don't get is that the world is very interconnected today. It's not like the Middle East is what it used to be 100 years ago, which means that it's a 3 weeks sailing away. People can end up in the Middle East right now from America in about 11 hours. It's literally just a half day away from us for the large part. So really anything happening in the world at this point, especially at the economic and militaristic level that the U.S. is at, it quite literally, pretty much anything going on in the world may as well be viewed as being on our doorstep in a modern day and age. So you really don't have the ability to just back off and not do something down there, especially if it's not protecting your own interests. That's pretty much just being a coward. And I'm not one for being a coward. And then someone's going to come in and say something stupid here in a minute, like, well, if you don't like it, why don't you go join the military and fight? Well, because that's not my job. Everyone in the military volunteered to be in the military, so they were the ones who volunteered for the job to be shot at. I congratulate them for it. They got a lot of courage for that, but that's what they get paid a check for. And that's also why they get paid extra when they go over there to get shot at. They get paid something called hazard pay and a whole bunch of other additional pays that are included on top of their base pay. So they actually do get compensated fairly well, along with all of the endless amounts of benefits that are given to all current and former serving members of the military to go and get shot at in the name of this country. Like, that's their job at the end of the day. Sounds brutal, but that's the reality of it. And I'm not one to sugarcoat jobs and positions. Like, if you work as a janitor, you don't like cleaning toilets, I hate to tell you, you shouldn't have become a janitor. If you want to do this kind of a thing, like we're doing here on this YouTube channel, but you hate public speaking, you probably don't want to be a YouTuber. I mean, like, that's just the reality of things. If you don't like that kind of stuff, don't do it. Because if you get in there and you gripe about it, you should have expected that. That's like asking for pistachio ice cream and then saying you don't like pistachios. Well, like the SpongeBob episode, I'm going to have to look over and go, well, why did you ask for it? But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. At least the best I can, in my opinion. But that's why I would say that we didn't go in and finish the job on the ground in Yemen, is because the current U.S. administration is scared of all the bleeding hearts coming out and saying that the military's job isn't to go to war, it's just to sit around and collect a check. And so with that, and I mean, one thing I have to also say here, folks, if the military, like, I know my tax dollars is not going to having a military that's 1.1 million strong. I think it's 1.2 now, with a $950 billion annual budget, soon to be knocked up to 1 trillion. I don't pay my tax dollars into a military that's going to idly sit around, it being the largest and most powerful on the planet, while our interests are being squandered around the world. I mean, I'm putting my tax dollars towards something, and I expect that American interests be supported and upheld, and my tax dollars aren't going into some pit where everyone just sits around and collects a check every 2 weeks. That's just ridiculous to me. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here goes to Rye Guy SR, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Rye Guy, as well, for that $20 support. And he said, keep up the great work. Best channel on YouTube. And thank you very much, Rye Guy. He said, LLT LSA, long live the Republic. And seems like we're getting closer to World War if China takes any islands. And take one from the chat.
Thank you for the support, Rye Guy. And it does appear that things are starting to heat up a little bit. And I mean, I never thought about it, them trying to take something piecemeal, but they certainly could, especially Kinmen. And I don't really think that's going to create a world war, because it would be impossible for anyone to retake Kinmen, because it's within a natural harbor. So you would have to somehow pretty much take Xiamen and Guangzhou and then try and take Kinmen back. And that would be pretty tough, because these cities are massive. There are millions in population, and it would be very tough to conduct an amphibious landing and then take an area like that and then try and retake Kinmen. So I thank you so much for the support. I would have to say, though, it's certainly getting pretty perilous in the East Pacific because of these kinds of intelligence assessments, and hopefully we'll be able to manage the situation somehow. But still, thank you so much once again. And we are going to be moving on into that live chat question in honor of Rye Guy SR. And so what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and this one is going to go to Haisad, who said, if the U.S. is expecting a transactional foreign policy, then what does Israel have to offer for the United States to spearhead?
Can you reread that one again?
I said, if the United States is expecting a transactional foreign policy, then what does Israel have to offer for the United States to spearhead?
I don't really think a transactional sort of a policy is what we need to necessarily be looking for, but if we were looking for it, I don't really know what Israel could give the United States in return. Most of the things that they could give us, we already have in abundance. So I don't really know how that would end up working. I'd honestly have to say they couldn't give us anything in a transactional exchange, but it's not always about doing things for these countries in return for something for them. We're not a mercenary. We're largely in the Middle East to protect our own interests. Israel is just an extension of that. And so many people look at that the wrong way around. Like, some people look at it as the US bleeds and dies for Israel, and some people act like that's America's right. And I actually got to say, folks, I actually kind of grew up around that idea, and I got to say that like, I'm all for the Israelis. Great little country down there, they do their thing, but I'm not for the idea that the U.S. literally lives and dies for the existence of Israel, because the United States stands on its own legs for its own interests. Great on the Israelis that they exist, but that's not America's responsibility to literally be their life preserver at any given moment. We're in the Middle East because we have our own interests there. And so we are dealing with the Iranians because they pose a direct threat to us. And they pose a direct threat to our control over the oil-producing countries in the Middle East. That's how I largely look at it. I don't really look at it as we're helping out the Israelis by dealing with the nuclear threat. We're helping out ourselves by getting rid of that nuclear threat. It's a nuclear threat that will threaten us in the end, and also what we're doing down there. But that's some, like, just to quickly talk about that, that's something that annoyed me a little bit. It's something that has annoyed me growing up, especially because I started to think a little bit more a lot more patriotic, in my opinion, about my own country. And there's kind of a prevailing theory, at least in some places around where I grew up, although it doesn't really seem to be that prevalent anywhere else rather than what kind of a situation we were growing up in, that the Israeli people are pretty much just above everyone. Like, that, like, this is like the literal idea we kind of grew up with. They're above everyone, and the U.S. and everyone living in it, including Matthew and me and everyone else, are pretty much just cattle. And we exist to just pretty much support the Israelis. And if we don't, our country is just going to be subjected to tortures and horrors beyond imagination. And I don't really know where that theory comes from, but I'd have to say that it's not really a wise one for U.S. interests, because it doesn't really make a lot of sense that on a diplomatic level or on a foreign policy level, we're trying to pursue the best possible outcomes for the U.S. citizenry, but for some reason we have to pretty much sacrifice everything in support of Israel. I'm all for supporting the Israelis and helping them out in this kind of a situation, and really helping them out in general, because they have been a pretty steadfast ally of the United States within the area and have largely had a lot of common ground with our strategic interests in the region. But it doesn't really make a lot of sense to just put it out that we don't need to find common ground. We just have to support them just because. I don't like that theory. I largely like the idea that it's more of a mutual arrangement, or more one where we find common ground. I think that's a better way of looking at it. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And I thank you once again for sponsoring live chat, Rye Guy SR, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here is going to go to none other than B-Man, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, B-Man, as well, for that support. He said, Do you prefer hot dogs or tacos or stir-fried rice?
I like tacos. Like, out of all three of those, I'd say tacos. Hot dogs are good. And fried rice is pretty okay. Fried rice can get bland, though, in really large amounts. You got to kind of, like, spice that thing up with some sauce. But I really like, out of those three, without a doubt, tacos. You can have so many different types of tacos with good flavors. Love them a great deal. Tacos are the best. But with that, I thank you so much for supporting and helping this channel to keep on running. Great question, B-Man. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Jack Ragnarsson, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Jack, as well, for that support. He said, without getting political, what is the logic behind the U.S. thinking we can trust untrustworthy countries and that they want to make deals when they don't? And the lack of action is frustrating in LSA.
And LSA, and thank you for the question, it's a position of naivety. That's the best way to put it. I'm not going to get political with the answer, but I'm going to give you all my idea as to why this is the case. The current president either has this, like, kumbaya ideology, which I don't really agree with, or he's naive to the point that he actually believes that the only reason these countries are not our friends is because we made them our enemies, which either way you look at that, I just don't really see where he's coming from. One, these countries are dishonest. Like, they're just dishonest to an insane degree. There's no kumbayaing to be had. You're not going to be able to give someone a Pepsi and stop the riot. Like, that's not going to be happening here. These people hate us. They hate us for their own reasons. And these reasons have been going on for hundreds of years. They may have just come up in the past few decades. But These countries hate our guts. China hates our guts because they're communist. And so they're going to be hating any country that's a full-on capitalist country, just because of its economic model. It doesn't have anything to do with the self-representation or the democratic form of government we have. It just has to do with the fact that we have a capitalist economic system. They're going to hate us for that, although China has one of their own. Russia is going to hate us because the Soviet Union collapsed because of our efforts, and also the Russian Empire collapsed, largely because of their involvement in World War I. And so they view it as the West has screwed them over endlessly, and they want to create a sphere where they're kind of like the United States, but in their own little realm. And we are absolutely at odds with them on that, because for us to succeed, they can't. And a lot of people have this goofy idea that everyone can succeed in the world as a country. Not true. Not true at all. They cannot succeed. There's a finite amount of resources and a finite amount of materials out there in the world. Everyone cannot succeed. Not every single country in the world can have a quality of life like Europe's or the United States. Nobody can, like, that just can't happen for everyone. It's impossible. So with that in mind, they are obviously against our interests. Iran is run by a group of religious fanatics that literally put their religious ideology above everything else, and so we will never find common ground with a country like that, because we largely put principle and a good practice over just radical religious ideology. And so these countries we will never find common ground with. And then another country like North Korea, we'll never find common ground with them because they exist in a very isolated kind of an environment. They have to, because if their citizens ever see what the outside world looks like, they're going to realize that they've been shafted for 70 or 80 years. So they will never open up with the United States and be friends with us, because the current ruling powers could not have that, or they will cease to exist. And so it's more so self-preservation at that point that North Korea has to stay the way it is. And so with all of that in mind, the current president, I guess, on the first theory, believes that we can actually just end up being friends with these people because he may not really understand the real nuance of what's going on in these countries, and because these people smiled at him once when he met them, he thinks that he's friends with them or something, when he doesn't understand there's this giant apparatus or apparati below each and every one of them that they pretty much are standing on a house of cards when they meet them. So they have to keep things running a certain way, or they're having to work on certain things because they have ambitions of power or control over a larger area of the world. The second theory would be, and what was my second theory, Matthew? I'm trying to rake my brain here to think about it. My starvation's getting to me here.
I'll be honest with you, I don't remember. I was reading the chat.
My second theory was a solid one, I will say. Now, I'm a little bit biased on that, but let's see. Let me think here. Either he thinks that they're the Kumbaya thing, or he thinks that they don't really hate us or something. Oh yeah, we made them. There's the second idea. We made them our enemies, and not the other way around. These countries made us their enemy. The United States has never gone out of its way to make enemies. They've made us their enemies. Iran made us their enemy off of day one. They held our embassy staff hostage for quite a while, pretty much through the entirety of the Carter presidency and on into the Reagan administration a little bit. Then the People's Republic of China, they have been enemies the United States historically for a long time because we supported Taiwan. North Korea has been our enemy because we support South Korea. And also North Korea has to have an external enemy, and what better one than the United States is a historical one that works for them, at least with how they portray their history. Russia views us as our enemy because we are the security guarantor of Europe outside of the Europeans themselves. And so these people did not become enemies because the U.S. wanted to have enemies. We don't need enemies. The U.S. doesn't really work that way, and the public doesn't need a united enemy to gather round. These people became our enemies because they hate our position in the world, or we're a blockage for them to have to make it through, an obstacle to move out of the way. And so it's either one of those two theories is the reason why we continuously keep getting run in circles right now, because it is just crazy to me to see how we keep on pretending like they're not really our enemies, and we can actually talk to them like they believe that too, and they don't. Like, that's why we've continued to have the same stance against them. Everyone's just carried the torch because there is no way to find common ground with these specific countries just because of how the world exists. It's unfortunate, sure, but it's a reality that we live in. But with that,
I think that might just be a public facing thing. Like, I'll be honest with you, I'm not going to get political with this, but I think this is my current assessment of the way that things are being viewed and perceived by the U.S. administration. I think the U.S. administration is well aware of what the reality of the situation is, because the realities aren't that concealed. Like, it's pretty obvious what's happening with Russia, China, and the rest of them. And occasionally you will hear like a statement about Russia is really making me angry, but then the next day you'll see a complete reversal of it, like it never even happened, and like complete amnesia. I think what the deal is just for the public's benefit to make it seem like work is being done. And I think the perception is that that is going to please the American people by making that appearance seem like that. But in reality, though, it's actually not pleasing anybody. It's usually upsetting a lot of people because it looks like we're siding with an enemy, which is not what reality is behind the scenes. But that's what it's being made to seem like in the public. And honestly, I would say that's not productive at all, because the American people, even though I see some people arguing that the general American can't understand how geopolitics works, I still like to believe that most Americans out there have a good or a decent brain on their shoulders and can realize what's really happening so they can handle the truth within reason. So if you tell people, Russia is not negotiating fairly, and if they don't start negotiating fairly, they're going to have sanctions slapped on them, and we adhere to that, I think most people understand that the president's not a war hawk. He's simply wanting to make sure that we're adhering to our standards and holding other countries accountable for their actions. But I think the problem is the American people right now are being viewed as not worthy of being on the same level as the administration. So that's why it's being dumbed down and made to seem like that, if that makes any sense.
But I mean, like, I'll be honest here, it's tough not to do that because a lot of people don't really have a grounded understanding of world affairs or how things actually work. So when you tell someone, yeah, we are going to have to send Marines on the ground into Yemen to deal with it. No, those Marines, and then they go freak out. They don't even know why. Like, they don't even really know why they're freaking out. They just have this idea in their head that something's got to be a certain way. Who knows why, but if anything goes against it, then they're going to have an issue. Like, I'm not trying to say that the American constituents are ill-informed or poorly educated, but a lot of them kind of make that argument seem pretty accurate. Because just in our experience of running this channel, you end up seeing, and they come in here and they leave pretty quick. We usually get rid of them. A lot of people who will come in here and they just have terrible ideas, like horrendous ideas. Why should we bomb Iran? I mean, we should let them have a nuke. They have a right to one. And it's like Tucker Carlson, for example, is kind of in that camp now. I'm like, is it just like the running trend to just try and screw ourselves over these days? Or are people that stupid that they'll screw themselves over and think it's a good idea? I mean, and when you see stuff like that, then you can kind of see why some administrations, like the past two, kind of just go out in public and just say the complete opposite of what they're really doing. Because they're like, we don't really know if the public can handle the reality of what we're doing, or if they'll just get pissed off or go irate about it. Who knows?
I think they're trying to manipulate the public, honestly. I don't think they're trying to be evasive because they're worried about the reaction. I think they're just trying to manipulate people. That's the problem. But at the same time, though, with the current government situation, I think if the current guy said something like Russia is evil, Russia's going to be taught a lesson, and if they go any further, then we're going to be at war with Russia. That would be a very extreme thing to say. But I think the way it works is most people, regardless of if they're informed or not, would simply fall in line, because that seems to be the thing that people do these days, is simply adhere to their party line politics. You'd have one side saying, that's on one side of the aisle, that's evil, that's war hawking, that's terrible. The other side would be saying, yeah, let's go for it. We should destroy Russia to the maximum, etc. And it's always going to be split along party lines these days. So you'll always have half the country saying they hate the decision, half the country is going to say they love the decision. That's just the way it works. It's the way it's always been. And really, that hasn't changed today, except social media has kind of amplified it to a certain extent. So I think they should just level with the people, take the risk, level with the people, obviously within reason. Don't say things like Russia's going to probably nuke us when we start fighting them or something, because that might cause people to go berserk or go crazy and start losing their minds or something. But tell them information within reason. That most people could probably hear and understand and probably comprehend within rationale.
I would agree. I think that's a good approach. And so with that, we are also, Matthew, how many super chats do we have left?
We have about 15.
Oh, not too many. And so with that, folks, I just got to say this really quickly. I hope we have not been showing this too well through the stream tonight, but I am starving. I don't know why, but I've been starving to death through the whole stream, to the point I'm actually nearly shaking from how hungry I am. So we're going to try and make sure to speed this thing up a little bit so we can get off air a little bit quicker tonight and try and get some eats, so that way we're not going into hyperglycemia or hypoglycemia like we are right now. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Kid Fox, who put in a $50 donation. Also, a massive support, and thank you very much to Kid Fox for that support. And they said, "Your best."
Hey, and thank you for the support, Kid Fox. And you're best indeed. And I think that maybe you are the best. And I thank you, Kid Fox, for the support and helping this channel to keep running. Because folks, like you are the best. Y'all help us to keep this channel rolling. And we thank you massively for that and appreciate you greatly for continuing to want to see the Enforcer channel on air every day. And so a big thanks to you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Duncan VR, who's another channel legend who puts in a 15 Australian. And thank you very much, Duncan, for that $15 support. He said, Baba Moo, they're eating the elephants on Tuesdays. Moo quack. The marmot said, hello, governor, and oink oink that fly.
And they are eating the elephants on Tuesday. But I do thank you for the support, helping this channel to keep running. And I gotta say, it's a wonderful thing to know that you are continuing to make this channel possible and throwing in the animal noises. It wouldn't be a normal day without the animal noises. You know something, Matthew, that the North Koreans didn't show is that the U.S. has zoos. Because one thing that's interesting to me, man, is that North Korea has a zoo. Have you ever seen their zoo?
Yes, I have seen their zoo, actually.
That's it. That's the entrance.
Yes. That looks like an aquarium.
Yeah, it kind of does in there, and that also looks fake as hell in there, honestly. That looks like Photoshop or something. I also like how...
It looks like an LG, TV screen back there.
Yeah, and I also like, man, how this guy is carrying around the hacky sack, like, right in front of the aquarium. It's like, this is supposed to be, like, the wealthy, affluent area of Pyongyang, and this guy's carrying around a hacky sack. So I don't know about that.
That's the birds that we eat today.
Those birds, which will be eaten on Tuesday. But I'm trying to see here if we can find... There's a picture of their zoo. And they only have one.
The chimps smoke at the Pyongyang
Hell
zoo?
yeah,
Like they
bro.
smoke?
Dude, it's a hard life, man. Like, they gotta
What the hell?
take it
I've
easy.
never seen that ever in my life. I've never seen a chimp smoke a cigarette. Only in North Korea would you see that.
Dude, this chimp be chuffing, man. Honestly, like,
bro, that thing looks demented. That thing looks demented.
dude,
What's wrong with
it's a tough life in North Korea, man. It's going through a lot right now.
Man, that thing looks evil. Look at the thing's eyes.
Dude, if you were a chimp living in North Korea, you would be evil. Like, that's no question about that. That would be hell on earth to live in North Korea. Like, look at this, dude. Look at that tiger in the Pyongyang Zoo. That looks like shit in there. Like, dude, if you were a chimp living in those kinds of conditions, you'd be irate.
Honestly, I've never seen a chimp smoke. Like, that's shocking. Like, that's just crazy.
But my question is, what kind of cigarettes are they? That's my question. Like, are they Virginia Slims? Are they like Camelbacks? What are they? Like, what is this thing?
No, there's
smoke?
off-brand ones that North Korea comes up with.
Oh, dude, it's probably like something like Mount Paktu Shining Star or something like that, like branded cigarettes or whatever. But honestly, man, it's kind of crazy to see that they have a zoo in North Korea, but they only have the one. They don't have multiples of them. This is the only zoo in North Korea, as opposed to the U.S. where there's a zoo in every single city. Also, what the hell's this? Why are they walking around in hazmat suits outside of the enclosures?
That's when the whirlybird was going around, I think, and they were disinfecting the handrails and stuff. Even North Korea, I think, got in on that.
Yeah, they did, actually. They shut down their borders completely, man, and sent themselves into a second great famine because of it, too.
I'll say this. I'm not one of those, PETA people that's, it goes as extreme as PETA or nothing like that. In fact, I'm nowhere near that. But I just don't like zoos. I don't like seeing animals locked up in the cages and stuff, at the people's, leisure of, looking at them and stuff. I understand, it's cool to see the animals. But, at the same time, though, it's aren't we a little bit beyond zoos and stuff like that? I don't like that, especially wild animals that are clearly not domesticated. They're still wild, being kept in captivity. I'm I'm not one of those tree hugging people, but I don't like seeing the animals locked up like that. I'd rather see them free.
Nah, I don't really like seeing it either too much. It always looks rough in places like that. It only looks good when they're in very good conditions, like excellent conditions, and then it makes sense a little bit because it's part of conservancy sort of a thing. Because a lot of extinct species still exist in zoos, at least to a limited degree, and they're trying to repopulate them. So there's a purpose that zoos exist for, but I still don't like to see it. Also, really quickly, I want to address this one before we move on. Michael M. said, Enforcer, please expand on what you think we should do in Yemen. What you guys said earlier about the American military members was pretty nasty. Russia thinks about their soldiers the way you guys do. No, they don't, because I don't say that they ought to go into a meat grinder in terrible conditions. What I'm saying is that the U.S. military gets pampering treatment a lot, And that's not the point of the job. Like, the point of the job isn't to go join the military and get a free paycheck and then always know that you're never going to go to war and you're literally just filling up space and collecting a check. The reason why they're getting paid to do that job is because it is a dangerous job and people are signing up and volunteering to do it. That means that the military's primary purpose is to go overseas whenever the nation needs them to and to go take care of our business. And sometimes that's going to be violent, and that's what their job is. Dealing with Yemen, we need to send people on the ground. If we want to deal with the Houthis, they have to, the Marines, the Army, whoever, it has to be put on the ground and they have to go deal with them. That's the only way to take care of the Yemeni Houthis. It shouldn't be said that, oh, U.S. soldiers are going to be put in danger. Yes, they will. That's their job. That's a part of what they do. That's why they volunteered. They get paid. They get paid extra. I'm all for that. All for the benefits they get. But I'm all for that under the idea that they're actually operating as the military and not Social Security or welfare checks 2.0, where you go through boot camp and then you sit around for 4 years as you wait out your contract and you really don't do anything. Like that's not what I'm for. And
those guys are like deterrent factors, though. Like when you have a massive standing army like that that has active service members in it, that's like sort of thinking of in a transactional way. It's like buying like more units of deterrence when you have more soldiers. So even though they're sitting around, and some people could argue that maybe it's like welfare or something for military, it is serving a purpose. Like those people simply being there and being trained and simply not fighting in conflicts is, at least in theory, helping to prevent a future war.
And not really. I mean, like look at Estonia, man. Estonia's got a military of what? I think it's like 5,000 people. The Russians haven't invaded them. It's like or better yet, let's go with a country that's not in NATO. Let's go with Vietnam. Vietnam has a somewhat smaller standing military, and China has never just invaded them for the hell of it. Like, you don't have to have a giant military to not get invaded, but the reason why we have a giant military is because we are a global superpower, and in any given moment, we have to expect that we are going to go to war with China or Russia or some other major military power somewhere else. It's a state of constant readiness. That's why the military is that big. It's not deterrence. It kind of ends up being deterrence to a small degree, but it's more so the fact that if a major war does break out, then we're going to be able to go into it immediately and have enough manpower to do that. That's really the whole purpose behind it. And if you look at how the military has evolved over the past century, that fits that to the T. It's not a deterrence thing. It's that we have to have as big a military. We have to have pretty much a pre-mobilized military to go fight whenever we need. It's not really about deterrence. It's about literally having a military so big off the bat you can crush anyone else from the start. That's the whole point.
Maybe so. But also at the same time, here's another thing, another factor as well. I personally don't have a problem with it. Like, people get in the military and they don't get sent off to fight because, it's not like you're getting rich in the military. They're paying very, very low salaries for you to be in the military. It's not somewhere you go to like start building wealth or something. That's not what it's for. And it also provides a good escape route for a lot of people that are in really bad positions in our country to actually have a purpose and serve the country and also build respect for themselves and things like that. So it's also, to me, it's like a path for rescue for a lot of people in America that really don't have purpose or direction, that are leaving high school. They have the option to go enlist in the military, feel proud of something. And it's not like they're like, becoming multimillionaires in the military. They're simply, making enough to simply get by. They can save a little bit of money, and then they feel like they have a foundation to be able to get out and then go do something even more productive in the private world.
Yeah, but the thing with that though, Matthew, is that we didn't set up the military to be a self-help organization. It's the military. It's the armed forces. Like we're not trying to go, oh well, we can't send the military over because Jimmy's trying to go to college here. The reality is that right now the Houthis are attacking U.S. vessels off of the Gulf of Aden right now. They are posing a specific threat to Western shipping and a specific threat to our economic interest, which means in the end it's affecting our quality of life, the people here in America. So we have to go over there and we have to deal with it. And how? And if bombings don't work, then we've got to go in and actually take care of them on the ground. And then that's where everyone stops and they start quivering in their boots because they go, oh, we can't put people in the military in danger because, Jimmy's just there to try and go to college in the future. It's like, well, Jimmy shouldn't have gotten in the military, like, unfortunately to say, if he wanted to go to college. This is the military, and while that's a benefit later, right now there's a job to be taken care of, and it's in Yemen. That's the truth of it. And then Michael M. said, what pampering treatment? The VA, the lovely accommodation. The pampering treatment is not doing the actual job that's outlined under the title the Army. The Army is the Army. That's a fighting force, or the Marine Corps, or the Navy, or the Air Force. It's a fighting force. The pampering treatment comes from they are going to just sit around and finish out their contract. And even though there are things around the world that they definitely need to be sent over to go tend to, we're not going to do it because everyone doesn't want to put the military out there to go do its job. That's the pampering treatment that I'm talking about. It's not that the barracks are cushy. It's not that you're, getting a 401k with stock options or anything in the military. It's the fact that you're literally, like, the military isn't being sent out to go do the job it needs to do right now because people are scared that the military is going to have to go do its job. That's the pampering treatment, because you never see that same thing happen in any other industry. You don't see firefighters go, oh, well, a whole block in Chicago's burning to the ground, but that might put some firefighters in danger to go stop that burning fire and to go save those orphans from the third floor of that building. So they're going to stay in the fire department today because they could end up getting hurt if they go out there. You don't see that in any other kind of a job anywhere on earth right now, or anywhere in America right now but the military. You don't hear people going, oh, well, it's raining and thundering and lightning, and it's 20 degrees outside in northern Montana. We're just going to stop all the trains from running and stop hundreds and thousands of tons of cargo from moving where it needs to go so that way people can buy their socks from Dillard's tomorrow. You don't see that. They say those conductors are going to go out there and they're going to get damn pneumonia if they have to, but they're going to keep those trains running. And they're going to walk however long they need to. And these sub-zero temperatures with a damn snowing, sleeting, blizzarding to get these trains moving and keep them going. You don't like with cops, you don't see cops go, oh, we're going to call everyone back to the precinct and just keep them there because there's a lot of criminals out there right now, and someone just conducted a bank robbery. Well, that happens in some cities.
I can provide you some places where that's actually the way it works.
That happens in some cities, but they get the ire of the whole country when that happens. And everyone goes to the cops. No, they should be out there dealing with the criminals, and they should be getting shot at because that's something within my periphery. And then the cops don't get any safety barriers. They have to go out and be prepared to get shot at any given moment just for pulling someone over because they were speeding. But then on the other hand, with the military, when an entire country like Iran is threatening our interest in the whole region with a terrorist force like the Houthis, whoa, then let's step on eggshells here. We can't send the military over to go deal with that because someone might get hurt. Unlike everyone else in every other job in America that has an inherent risk of danger, like firefighters, police officers, railroad men, truckers, the lot, the whole lot. You can name any job, the coal miners, any of these people. Oh, they can go out and get in danger because they don't have the armed forces over their job. Their jobs don't have implied danger in it, so they can go deal with the danger. But the job that literally deals with pretty much engaging enemy forces and trying to destroy them in the best interest of our country, we got to be careful about sending them out because then they might get hurt. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me at all. Like that's why, Michael M., I have that statement on that, because it's getting ridiculous to me how we're spending so much money and we have such a big military, and then we are so afraid to use it against anyone, even the Houthis, which are probably the weakest threat that we could deal with right now, because, someone might get hurt. Yes, someone will get hurt, and it'll be very unfortunate when it happens, but that shouldn't stop us from having to do the right thing. That's like saying, I could run into that building right now, where someone is better yet, I could walk over to stop this heinous thing from happening, whatever it is, but I might get hurt, so I'm going to let this wrongdoing keep going so that way I don't get myself in harm's way. That doesn't make any sense. That's really self-serving, in my opinion. And let's see.
I'm just not sure what the Michael fellow's arguing, because
I don't know either.
I understand if he's trying to say, I think he's having a hard time putting it in the proper context or words or something. If he's trying to say that he doesn't want the U.S. military sent off to foreign wars that generally don't directly assist the United States, I can understand that in theory, or at least in the principle of it. But I think what he's arguing, and he's just not saying it outright, is he doesn't support deploying the military at all unless the U.S. is attacked directly, like on our domestic 50 states. So if that's the argument, that's very, very ill-informed, because you have to have hegemony in the world like the United States has held for decades, or otherwise you're going to have much larger problems than we've ever seen before in the history of the country. You can't operate a geopolitical power like that, or you'll fall behind quick.
Hey, I know how that worked. Michael M. World War I and World War II. Everyone had that same mindset in both of those wars, and look what it cost us in the end. It probably cost us hundreds of thousands more lives than it originally had to, because everyone said, oh, well, you know, we can only do something if they directly attack, so we shouldn't be putting the military out in harm's way early or preemptively to try and deal with the situation and nip it in the bud. We ought to just wait until someone attacks us directly, and by then, it's a huge shit show that we're getting involved in at that point. I mean, it's literally spanned the whole globe by the time it gets to us, because we're literally on an island unto ourselves in North America, and then we have to get involved, and then it's a whole big deal. It's not just a little thing like going over and pretty much trimming a bad rose off of the bush down in western Yemen. Now the whole damn garden's on fire, the whole farm's on fire, and we're running out there with a blanket trying to put the whole thing out. Now
it's kind of like Nazi Germany. It's like, you know, a country aggressed that strongly where they were able to take over almost the entirety of Europe. And create basically a mega force, basically. And if they could have kept going, they would have come for us next here in the United States. They would have tried to launch an attack on us directly with that mega force they created. That's why you can't just ignore the rest of the world, because if you do that, a country like Germany back in the day that does something extreme like that will end up gaining so much power because they take over so many countries that they'll be rivaling the power of the United States. And then it's going to be a close fight, which you don't want to be in a situation like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy. And also, Indiana saying, Ron Premison for us, so this is an interesting one. They don't want us to spend the money. They don't really care about the blood. They also don't want us to, let's see. They also don't want us to go break the crap out of everything. If it isn't broken. But the thing is that we're already spending the money. The military is already spending the money that it has right now. The budget doesn't get increased when we go to war. The budget stays the same. I mean, we bombed the Houthis, and the budget for the military, at least for this 2024 to 2025 fiscal year, remained the same. It's not like the money's already being spent. It's just a matter about actually putting all this stuff to work and putting it to use. And about the blood, like the reality is that right now, I think it's the case. Several dozen soldiers, service members, die in the military every year right now, even in pretty much remote peacetime, from all kinds of things, accidents, you know, like or anything like that. They just end up dropping dead, like 30 or so a year. So it's like, you know, if there are armed service members who are already in their prime and they're just dropping dead here and there, and if we go into Yemen, at least based on our prior experiences in Iraq, maybe a few people will end up dying every year, which is a very, very small amount, and it's incredibly unfortunate, but it's the reality of what we have to do. I mean, like, if we have to do something, we have to do something. If a few of them unfortunately get killed, that is going to be a very sad moment for the country, but at the same time, they were over there doing an important cause protecting our shipping. We're already spending the money anyways, so it's not really like we're having to ramp up spending. We're already spending $950 billion a year on them. And also, we're not really breaking the crap out of anything. It's already broken. Yemen is split in two. It's been in a civil war for 11 years. There is the Yemeni government, which is in the eastern side of the country, and then there's the Houthis in the western side of the country. What we're doing is we're going in and we're trying to fix the problem that's posed to us. It'll be up to the Yemeni government to actually fix the problem that's already been broken for 11 years at this point. But it's just kind of what we have to do. I mean, you know, we can fix a leak and two more spring up, but it's just kind of a part of what we do. You know, we don't say, well, you know, the tires are balding on that car, but we don't want to replace the tires because we might scratch the rims. You know, you got to replace the tires anyways, and you scratch the rims, you got to figure out how to deal with that as well later. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And let's see. And also Michael M, I just don't really know where you're getting anymore. Because Michael M said, I was in favor of the Afghanistan invasion. There's plenty of humanitarian aid. I would disagree. I mean, I don't really think there was plenty. I talked to people who were in Afghanistan. They said not even the army was getting supplies in most areas because it was too remote, and they couldn't drive convoys up there, and they couldn't fly helicopters in there, so they just leave them there, and they'd have to go and pretty much live off the land like an army of old. And I don't think that you should willy-nilly invade Yemen because we're not effectively using diplomacy. Well, we used diplomacy on them, and we told them to stop shooting at our stuff, and then they didn't. And that was all we could do. Like, we gave them an ultimatum. They didn't follow through on the ultimatum. So then you had to go in there and deal with them. I mean, that's
risky too. Yeah, I mean, if you start letting little ragtag little places like the Houthis start firing at commercial vessels, and we resort to diplomacy by saying, "Hey, you little ragtag group that's not even a real state, stop shooting our vessels." Honestly, I could see an argument where that might be a bad move, because they should be so scared to attack our commercial ships that they don't even think about it. Like, that's how scared they should be. They should know that the moment you fire on a commercial U.S. vessel, that's going to result in the destruction of our entire group. So we better not even do that in the first place. The fact that they felt like they could actually attack a ship and potentially walk scot-free, which they basically did, that is disturbing in itself. That means they didn't respect us enough to even not do it in the first place, which there should be that fear in place.
And also, most importantly, primarily, we don't conduct diplomacy with terrorists. And these people are terrorists. They're not a legitimate government or a country of any kind. These people are the equivalent of cutthroats, bandits, and pirates of old. That's what these people are. We don't negotiate with these people. We don't talk to them. We don't go, hey, let's feel out your feelings. Do you feel like less of a terrorist today? Do you feel like killing less Americans today? We don't ask them that. We tell them, you little bastards, you're going to stop this, or else we're going to come in and we're going to deal with you. And then they have the option of following along and sparing themselves, or they have the option of not to, and I can assure you that many more of them are going to be gone before ours are. That I can tell you. That's kind of the reality of it. Because I don't know what happened in the modern world, Michael M. I feel like you're kind of getting into it a little bit, but a lot of people have gone soft and started to think that we negotiate with terrorists now, which the U.S. will never do. We literally one of the first wars that we fought as an independent country was against the Berber pirates of North Africa because they were conducting acts of terror and seizing our ships and forcing our sailors into slavery. This country has never negotiated with terrorists, and I don't think we ever will. And I would say that on this moment, this is not the moment where America is going to bend its knee and start negotiating with terrorists. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Keymaster, who puts in a $10 donation, along with Kid Fox, who threw in another one. This is a $10 support from Kid Fox, and thank you very much to the both of you for that support, and we do appreciate it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank the both of y'all for the support, because if it wasn't for the both of you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running. And so a big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Otarak, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Otarak, for that support. They said, in the Finnish army, we have a joke that there are two things that will never run out. Our spirit to endure even in the hardest times, and pea soup. And what are two things that the U.S. Army will never run out?
Two things that the U.S. Army will never run out of is money and bombs. Like that is something I can promise. The budget is so freaking big at this point. I just don't think there's any way that the U.S. military could run out of money. Like, well, they technically do sometimes, but still, I think that'd be a pretty tough one. But as far as the U.S. would go, the U.S. military will. I mean, that would be my best answer, really, just thinking about it off the top of my head. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep it running. I gotta say, pea soup, that sounds pretty good, actually. I've never really had pea soup before, but I've always thought it sounded pretty decent. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
You know, but you've never really lived until you had split pea. That's different right there. You got to try some of that. I've never actually had any of that, but I need to try it. I have a can of it in the pantry. But anyways, jumping into our next one here. This one goes to Andrew L., who puts in a $7 donation. And thank you very much, Andrew L., for that support. He said, live better and ditch the cables.
And
cable like TV.
And thank you for the support. And please don't, folks. Our business is going to go under. I'm just kidding. But make sure to get out there, folks, and touch grass from time to time. Well, I do it by going and looking at trains because it's a pretty cheap and easy thing to do. But you know, if you get the chance, folks, make sure to go out there and touch the grass a little bit from time to time. It'll help you in your health. And so with that, a big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Eric Horner, LSA, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, Eric Horner, for that support. And we do appreciate that very much. And hold on a second. I got to read this one and process it. Let's see here. Damn, that was actually what I thought it said right there. That's crazy. Someone put in something crazy in live chat. But moving on to our next one here. This one goes to Right Geek Project, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, good sir, for that support as well. I said, what are the chances that BRICS countries join hands against the U.S. in a trade war and armed conflict? And other than Brazil, the U.S. seems to be hostile towards them.
Oh, no, they probably wouldn't. India doesn't like China at all. And China and Russia doesn't really have that great relations with India anymore. So India would be out. It'd just be BRICS without the I. But as far as South Africa, well, actually, we kind of pissed them off recently. I don't know. Maybe they join in on that. But they don't really have a lot of trading power. You know, they're busy doing their own thing down there. China could... Well, China's already in a trade war, technically. Russia... Russia would join in the trade war for sure, but they don't really have a lot of power over us. There's like no trade that we conduct with them. And then Brazil. Brazil, I don't really think we conduct that much trade with them. So if they all united in a trade war, it wouldn't really amount to a hill of beans, because the only one we have significant trade relations with is with China, and India wouldn't even join in. So it pretty much would be a nothing burger if they did that. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Jeffrey Walker, who puts in a $5 donation as well. And thank you very much, Jeffrey, for that support. He said, well done again, as always, gentlemen. And the LSA was strong tonight. And for fun time, what is the fastest palindrome on the planet?
The fastest palindrome. Let's see. Let me try and find that really quickly. Let's see. I don't know. I have no clue, but I do thank you for support and helping this channel to keep on running, and thank you for enjoying it and making this thing possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Siri, who puts in a 5. And Siri said, thanks, great work, Enforcer Bros.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support and enjoying the work. We try our best here every single night. And so a big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well. And also, Mouse Fitzgerald said, his race car. That makes sense. That makes sense. Now it makes sense. Dang, I missed that completely. But still, thank you
The
once again.
fastest race car on the planet? Is that the question?
No, it's a palindrome. Palindrome, you say it's a fast palindrome. You know, I get it. It's a race car, so it's fast. But it's also the word's a palindrome, so it's a fast palindrome. I didn't get it, but now I get it. And I got to say, Mouse Fitzgerald, thank you for sharing that with us. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Filter Troll, who puts in a $2 donation. And thank you very much, Filter Troll, for that support. He said, thank you for explaining NOTAM to me, Matt. And no problem as well. NOTAM, if anybody's curious, because Filter Troll asked me earlier, what does that even mean? It means a notice to airmen, which is sent out to pilots, and they get that before they start flying their planes, and they're supposed to check them before they take off. So that way they don't fly into restricted airspace. And it's basically, in simple, easy terms, it's a no-fly zone, basically. It's a temporary no-fly zone around certain areas from certain times. So that's what it is. But thank you very much, Filter Troll, for that support. And we also have a $2 support from Plazoth, who did not leave a comment. But thank you very much, Plazoth, as well, for the support, and we do appreciate it. But Enforcer, what say you?
Yeah, thank you for the support, Plazoth, because while you didn't throw in a comment, we are greatly appreciative of the support. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And it is now time to jump into our live chat question proper. It's that time of the night. So let's get our Morse code decoders. Tonight we had Claude, Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Mason Miami, Joni Dog, and Norm Pritchett. They said tonight's LSA Morse code decipher says Israel is getting ready to do what the West will have to do someday, and hopefully they succeed in LLT LSA.
And ding! And that's the sound of money. I got that down on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. I gotta congratulate you all in the Lee Spring Army Signal Corps for getting that correct pretty much every single night. It's a truly impressive thing, and I gotta say, good on y'all for that. And so with that, we're gonna be moving on to the live chat questions. Before we get into it, though, I do have to say that we are trying to round this thing out just a little bit early, and it looks like tonight we might be able to round it out about 7 minutes early. Really big time savings, but we will be addressing 3 live chat questions, and then we're gonna be rounding out the stream. And so with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Filter Troll, who said, will the Golden Dome be able to stop a nuke?
I don't think so. It sounds like it's entirely based on intercepting hypersonic missiles, which $500 billion to intercept something that's only going to be in vogue for maybe 7 to 10 more years seems to be a bit of a waste of money, kind of like the Texas Towers were. But hey, you know, like, I don't know. I mean, you know, we kind of wasted money like that before, so why not do it again? But I don't think so. I don't think it would. But anyways, with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Jeff Alley, who said, if Israel does strike Iran, how does that affect the Iranian population? And does it unite them with the government because it's Israel attacking them?
It probably wouldn't, especially if the Iranian government is creating nuclear weapons. The Iranian people are probably about as scared of the nuclear weapons as Israel is and America is. So if the Israelis end up striking, destroying them, I don't really think it'll end up creating any fear or rallying with the government. I think it'll just be kind of a net neutral sort of a thing on that point. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so who is the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is AF Kaplan, who said, Caddy the Cat and I were wondering if you have heard anything about an attack on the Russian port of Vladivostok.
I have not heard of any attacks on Vladivostok recently. It's a very isolated port geographically, pretty much on its own. And I have not heard any attacks on it up till this point. If there are any attacks that will be happening on a Russian port, I can tell you that historically the running trend has been that it's been Sevastopol and Novorossiysk, as well as the port of Rostov-on-Don, or specifically the smaller port of Azov right down here, that has been targeted a great deal by the Ukrainians. But we have also Kerch, by the way, I forgot to mention Kerch. But I haven't seen any indicators or reports that the actual city of Vladivostok has been attacked recently. And so with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. And we reach the end of tonight's stream. I got to thank you all so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I got to say, it's the end of the night for all of us here, and we're going to be making sure to round this thing on out and get ready for tomorrow. If there is a short war video to be made tomorrow, I'll be the one making it. And of course, you can always expect us to be on air tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern time to cover the next 24 hours of news from around the world. And so with that, a big shout out to all 9.3 thousand of y'all who were here at the peak, and the 63,000 of y'all who have joined us so far. It's been an absolute honor to be able to cover the news. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraine, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, thank you all once again for joining us yet again tonight, and all 63,000 people that were here by the end of the stream. And we will see you all tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern for the next night of War News streams, and also midday tomorrow as well for a short war video. And I have a weird suspicion that tomorrow we probably will have enough news for a short war video, so you probably will see one tomorrow, at least hopefully. Hopefully that's the hope. But anyways, we will see you all then. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Heroam Slava, get some rest, and good night.